Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am the creative Contessa. From here, where I am in Daegu, South Korea, to wherever you are in the world, welcome to my medieval sewing party. It's been a while since we did one of these, a couple of weeks at least. My travel schedule did not permit me any kind of proper space for live streaming this sort of activity, so I'm really glad to be back in the saddle, as it were. I've really missed you all. So first, as always, if you can hear me, let me know. Um, it's always an issue with technology, whether I'm actually audible or not. Today we are going to be starting off with a getting dressed process. So I am already wearing my smock, as we would say in modern pronunciation. And there's actually been some very interesting conversations about this garment and the term for it. So one person commented that it's not a smock, it's a shift. Well, actually, the word shift for the linen or cotton undergarment that goes against your skin doesn't enter the English language until the 17th century. Before that, in English, we call this a smock. It's called a chemise in French, a camisa in Italian, a camisa in Castellano in Spanish. But the word shift is not a medieval word. So shift has nothing to do with the shape of the garment. Whether someone commented that this is called, not called a shift because a shift is a straight garment with no tailoring in the waist. No, it's got nothing to do with the tailoring. It has to do with the layer of garment that it represents. So this is called a smock in 15th century English for both men and women, by the way. Susan, welcome. It is so lovely to see you back here in my space. Now, some of you may have noticed some changes in the studio space. That's because all the hooks that I had glued to the wall, which was that wall, while I was gone, they all came crashing to the ground. And so the tapestry had to be hung up elsewhere while I figure out how else to suspend it from the wall. So there's a shelf system behind me. And it's not as pretty, I know, but at least it's something. Sorry, everyone. I'm working in sort of limited circumstances here currently. Laurie, welcome. It's so lovely to see you. Kitties are, of course, in full rambunctious mode. Chimi just tried to run off with the Ethernet cable still attached to the phone. So if the phone goes crashing to the ground, the camera goes crashing to the ground, it's because my cat has run off with the Ethernet cable. Just letting everyone know that's a real possibility this morning. So getting dressed, I've started, of course, in my smock, my linen layer that goes against my skin because I don't want to get demonetized and banned on all of my social media platforms. So this is when I'm working on a new one of this style. It has long gores in the sides to create that tailoring around the waist and that drape. It has a gore in the front and a gore in the back to create widths in the skirts and also gores on the sides. Now, someone also made a comment under one of my other getting dressed videos on Facebook, actually. She noticed that there is a seam running through the long gore that runs from my waist up to my armpit. And she claimed that by putting a seam there, I completely ruined the gore. It has no more bias stretch. It cannot possibly function. There's plenty of stretch. I can literally feel the stretch as I pull on it. And as we actually look at extant shirts that have survived, smocks that have survived from the Middle Ages, and tunics as well with gores in the armpits, they frequently have two triangles instead of one solid square, because in many cases, the geometric construction was as much a question of using every last bit of fabric as it was about the practical nature of the construction. Right, okay, so any questions about the smock, just let me know. This is a 15th century Franco-Burgundian English style smock based on a couple of illustrations. We don't have many illustrations of women in just their smocks. And unfortunately, we have no complete extant smocks from the second half of the 15th century. So there's actually a bit of conjectural guesswork that went into this construction, but there are a couple of depictions of women in smocks that have very clear shaping. So I prefer the shaped version of the smock versus the turnip sack version. Hence why I have these gores here. Okay, next layer is going to be my stockings. And actually today we're going to be working on repairing my stockings. I realized I have exactly one pair of hosen, as they're called in 15th century English, one pair of hosen left that still have intact feet. Every other pair of my fabric cut hosen have holes somewhere in the foot. There's the toe hole. All right, so today we're going to be working on repairing them. I'm basically just going to be putting entirely new soles on all of them in a much heavier fustian. Anyway, stocking, hosen, right? So I always put my hosen on right after I put on my smock. This is a very practical reason because the overlayers that go over top of this are both heavier and very tight lacing and might limit the amount that you can actually bend over at the waist. So it's much more comfortable to do it before the overlayers go on. So these are bias cut, which means that if the grain normally, this would be the up down. This would be how the grain normally runs, the warp in the weft, but you rotate it 90 degrees and cut it that way, and then you have stretch instead of, let me get it the right direction and show you no stretch, instead of no stretch, right? Bias cut. That's what bias cut means in case you've ever wondered. So I go ahead and I put these on now. Hosen in this era, at least the hosen like this, do not seem to have a left and a right foot. It doesn't seem that they did that kind of shaping. I say seems because we do have a few that have survived, but not exactly an overwhelming number to give us a full picture of how hosen actually worked in the Middle Ages, whether they were in fact ambidextrous. Ambidextrous would be for your hands, ambidextrous, or if they were single, designed to go on a specific foot. These are made of linen. In the expense accounts from the 15th century, we don't often actually see materials detailed for women's hosen. Usually it just says such and 2 pairs of hosen paid to Margaret Brewery for the making thereof or the fashioning thereof in the language of the time, such and such amount of money. And it doesn't necessarily specify what they were made of. We do have a couple of archaeological examples of linen hosen. These are linen. We also have archaeological examples of woolen ones. Okay, so there we go. Hosen on. Wait, I just realized you probably couldn't actually see the hosen. Because unfortunately, I'm working in the short direction of the room now instead of the long direction, so I can't get you as far back. This is what the hosen looked like with garters. They are held up by garters. No, garters were not a sexy time thing in the Middle Ages. They were a practical hold your hosen up thing. Men and women wore them. I also saw some other ridiculous comment at some point recently from some man, or not, some fashion historian, not some man, some fashion historian who claimed that only men wore garters. That's definitely not true. Definitely not true. Okay, so moving on, we then go to the next layer, which in 15th century English is called a kirtle. Kirtla, kirtla, kirtil. There's at least 15 spellings that I've documented. 15th century orthography for the loss. This is a front lacing gown. This is also the layer that actually provides bust support. We don't have much evidence of separate bust support in Europe. The only places in medieval Europe, the places we do have it for specifically are Central Europe, in sort of Bohemia, in areas of the Holy Roman Empire, and really only for the 14th and 15th centuries. I'm not going to, 16th century is beyond the Middle Ages, in my opinion. And so, as far as we can tell, it's actually in most places in 15th century Europe, it's the kirtle that provides the bust support, or the gamora in the case of the Italies. So this one is made of wool. It is not lined in the body at all. It didn't really need it. There is facing around the neckline and around the lacing edge, and you can see this. There's a great kirtle that is depicted on Agnès Sorel, the mistress and practical queen of France in the middle, king's mistress and practical queen of France in the middle of the 15th century. And she's depicted nursing a baby Jesus. And so her kirtle is actually open. And so you can actually see the facing along the edging of her gown and see how it's finished. So this is short sleeved, and that is very practical because it means that any long sleeved gown, let me know if you all can hear the construction noise. If so, I will just suffer and close the window. It'll make the kitties unhappy, but they can suck it up. Anyway, the the lacing, laces shut all the way front. And one of the benefits, I'm sorry, I was talking about the sleeves. If you put a gown over top that's long sleeved, then you don't necessarily want an undergown that's also long sleeved because that's going to bind up your arms if your over sleeves are tight. And by the 1460s, the sleeves of the gauna, the guna, as it's called in 15th century English, which we would call an overgown, were very tight and by getting tighter. And then by the 1470s and the 1480s, they looked painted on. So you definitely want a short sleeve kirtle in that case. You don't want a long sleeve kirtle. So I'm going to lace this up. It laces in the front. Kirtles can also lace on the sides. I have no good evidence of them lacing in the back. And that's a practical consideration, right? Like, who's going to lace you up? You have to have someone to help you, which isn't necessarily so far beyond the realm of possibility. People lived in communities, no one lived alone. So there was always someone there to help you. But even still, it's just more convenient if it laces in the front or on the sides. Now, there are some gowns in 15th century Italy that lace on the front, the sides, the front and the sides. And so that gives you complete flexibility for, let's say, if you happen to have an expanding belly due to pregnancy, right? So this is a technique called spiral lacing, and basically it ends up being a kind of whip stitching where you just sort of whip stitch the front of the dress closed, but you have lace holes instead of having to actually use a needle and thread. But there is actually a species of needle right here. You can see this is called a bodkin in 16th century English. I'm not certain what the 15th century English word for it is. And it basically, like, literally like a big giant needle, you just lace it onto your lace like this. Oh, you know what? I think I forgot to set this to subscribers only. That's on me. That's my mistake. Oh well. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't use a mic because yeah, I'm in a very limited circumstances right now. I can't use a mic because I have to use an Ethernet cable because my Wi-Fi doesn't reach to this room. And unfortunately, the Ethernet cable plugs into the same port as the mic. So there it is. Yep, mic is not an option. Sorry. The options are live stream with no mic, or at least here for this particular style of live stream, because I definitely can't go down to the river and do a getting dressed. That would literally get me deported from Korea. So as you see, it actually doesn't take long to lace up one of these front lacing gowns at all. It actually goes pretty quickly. And actually, let me go back and reach. Yeah, I wish I could have a mic, Susan. This is actually well, I guess it's not an external microphone. It's the constructions microphone. Yeah, I wish I could use my good mic. We even have a nice new Rode mic, and it's great. And I can't use it because my Wi-Fi doesn't reach to this back room. Oh well, there it is. Yeah. If I were to do this getting dressed video down on the river where I, you know, can use my microphone because then I'm just using mobile data, then great. Anyway, so as you see, the spiral lacing actually goes super fast. I mean, yes, it's slower than a zipper, but it really doesn't take that long at all. And some people have been asking whether this kirtle is comfortable to wear. It is super comfortable to wear. This is how I'm dressed for the rest of the day, by the way. I'm not going to change clothes after this live stream. This is it. This is how I will spend the rest of my day, doing all the normal things I do about my demands, cooking and cleaning and doing things for the cats. And this is how I'll go out and go shopping. This is how I'll go out and take an evening walk. No problem. Very comfortable. It really does feel nice. So yeah, kirtle for the win. Hashtag bring the kirtles back. Right. So here's what it looks like all the way around. Yes, very nice. Okay, so we have a couple more details that I'm going to put on for the purposes of this stream. So first off, I'm going to put on my belt. Oh, my Penzic medallion is still attached to my belt, so I can take that off. For those of you who don't know, I just spent 2 weeks at a 15th century medievalist fair called Penzic, an event hosted by the much maligned Society for Creative Anachronism. And it's one of the reasons I haven't been live streaming, because I was traveling, visiting family after that. And then I was recovering from extreme jet lag upon coming back to Korea. So this is my belt. It is called a demescent in 15th century English and also in 15th century French. And that literally means a demi belt, a semi belt, a half belt. And that's because it does now on me, but I lost a lot of weight at Pensick. Because normally it only comes this far, actually, and then you have a chain that closes it the rest of the way. But the nice thing about the demescent style belt is that instead of having holes and a tongue and a buckle, you've got a hook like that. And then you've got this chain, and you'll see you've got all this length to play with on the chain. So that means it's completely adjustable for women whose hips might be changing size in pretty frequently in sort of extremes, depending on your state of pregnancy, right? And yes, it is a myth actually that all women in the Middle Ages were pregnant all the time. That's not true. There were a lot of women in monasteries and convents who never got pregnant. And also even women who were of childbearing age who were married and in possibly wanting to get pregnant. Infertility happened, and sometimes the marriages weren't so happy, so they were literally only pregnant exactly when they wanted to be. So yeah, this is called a demescent because it is a semi-belt, a half belt, not a complete so-called belt, so to say. So we've got the demescent on. Now it has this neat little pouch hanger here, right? And that is so that, Kitties, did you run off with the, I think the cats ran off with the pouch. The pouch was knit out of wool, and my cats have a wool addiction, so I think my cats ran off with the pouch. Anyway, so when you have a pouch with purse strings, you actually put that through the belt hanger, not around the leather, because you don't want to, see belt hanger, because you don't want the strings to pull on, stretch, and malform the belt itself. So all the pressure hangs straight down of the purse from this metal bit instead of pulling in very discrete parts of the belt itself. So pouch hanger for the win. Next layer, though, would be my kerchief, my couvre-chef in 15th century French, my cover-chef, couvre-chef, cover-chef, kerchief. There is at least 10 different spellings of this word in 15th century English, 15th century orthography, or the loss. Now, I've already got my hair done. In fact, this is how I slept in my hair. So if you want to see, this is what bedhead looks like on me. So I sleep in braids, and I did, however, I'll show you the comb I used. If you're interested in medieval hair care, I did a live stream a couple of weeks ago from my medieval pavilion showing how to do medieval hair washing all the way through from the beginning to the end if you want to see that. And I also talk about the comb. This is a replica medieval comb. This is a basic one, so it's not fancy. It doesn't have any carving or anything like that, but it's got wide tines for getting the knots out first, and then these narrow tines for distributing your natural oils through your hair, for removing detritus and excess oil from your hair, and for making your hair all nice and shiny. So before I went to bed last night, that's what I did. I combed my hair with this comb and then braided it, and this is how it looks in the morning. So I decided, I thought about unbraiding it and then combing it and rebraiding it for you all, but I want to get sewing. So maybe next time I'll do the full combing and hair thing. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these braids, and we actually don't know how necessarily how medieval 15th century French or Burgundian women put their hair up, and not necessarily even with English women. The Italians show us, they've got all this great hair taping. I haven't seen any evidence of hair taping, but they also didn't have the kind of bobby pins that would really give you the kind of granular control you need to just use them alone to pin up your hair. They had this kind of U-shaped pin, but you would need to have really thick hair for those to work. So, there's different conjectural options. I'm now going to do the quick and dirty, what I call tying my braids to the back of my head. So I take my braids, tie a half knot, tie another half knot, tie another half knot, and then I just kind of take that little mini bun that I've just made and I tuck it in. And the reason I don't care about this and how it's actually going to look is because it's actually going to get covered and supported by the kerchief, the use of which I'll just demonstrate in a moment. But as I was staring backwards, I realized that my tapestry, and this is a real tapestry, not like one of those cheapies. This is actually linen and wool and woven and everything. This is a replica of the Lady and the Unicorn. And what the lady who is playing the organ, even though she's dressed allegorically, they actually do have her hair taped over top of her frontlet and over the top of her head. Now, I don't think this weird thing with the hair sticking up, I'm pretty certain that part was allegorical, but actually it does show that maybe even in France and Burgundy, they had the idea of hair taping as a way to secure your hair to your head in sundown. Anyway, okay, so now comes the kerchief. Can you guys hear the kitty? Man, everyone is just so active today. There are kitties outside fighting with each other, and I can hear them screaming at the top of their little kitty lungs. Okay, so this has two parts. This rectangular part is the front, and then the back, the trapezoid at the back, is actually the part that covers the back. This thing is super great. We need to bring the kerchief back, not for modesty, but for practicality. If you're having a bad hair day or you just don't feel like doing anything with your hair, I mean, you can get away with not even combing your hair and putting this thing on, right? So it goes on like that. See how nicely it sits? And then just automatically, like I don't have to do anything to make it sit on my head. No pinning, no nothing. But now I can take the trapezoids of the kerchief and I just twist them in towards me, sort of mirror twisting both sides like this. Okay, twist, twist, twist all the way to the end. That's what it looks like. And notice how it has scooped in to actually sort of cup the back of my head. So now that messy bun that I made with my braids is now completely contained. And now I have two options. I can bring the tails up and over like this and tie them, or I can cross them in the back like this and tie it like this. And I've seen both options. I personally, for my hair and my level of activity, I actually prefer to just bring it up the sides, like so. And in the pictures that we see of women wearing these, it's just one simple knot. And then depending on how long your knots, your tails are, the tails on this are actually kind of long. You can either just let it hang, or when they're shorter, when they're longer like this, I like to just tuck them in so that they're not doing all kinds of weird stuff. Now, you have the option of leaving the frontlet out like this, just fully flat out. Right. Stylish. Just a moment of silliness. Or you can fold it back like this. Now, I like both looks personally. And if I'm out in the sun, if I'm outside, out and about, just this little bit of extra protection around my face actually severely reduces the sun glare, right? But it makes me a little crazy to have something in my peripheral vision like this. So I don't often leave it down. I usually fold it back like that. Yeah. No kitty sounds here. Great. Yeah. Couvre chef, and you'll never have a bad hair day again because no one can see your hair, except of course for a couple of cute little wispies that just sort of charmingly come out like this, right? That's just my hair in humidity. It's very humid here. I'm in South Korea currently, and it's like, I don't know, 85% humidity. Yeah. Okay. Now for me for today is going to be the final touch, and the touch that is going to trigger some fellow reenactors, right? So the topic of bling often comes up, and I already have on a couple of rings actually. Show you another ring I'm going to put on. So this is a replica ring from the V&A, made by Armor and Castings. They are one of my channel sponsors, and it is a love ring. Now we don't know if it was for a wedding or an engagement, or if it was just a love token, but it has on it amour me tient, which means love holds me, love has me in its grasp. Right? And we know that medieval people wore rings on more than just their their so-called ring finger. They wore them on multiple fingers, and we also know that various various places actually passed laws against it. Florence passed a law saying that you could only wear a maximum of 3 rings. So God knows what Florentine women were doing in the 15th century in terms of rings. But that's not the piece that's probably going to trigger people. I'm now going to put on my favorite piece of bling, my armor and castings collar. Oh, Alicante, que conozco Alicante. Lo he visitado mucho, sí. Sorry, break into Castellano. So this is many people have asked me about this collar. So they, okay, weird question. So this is a replica of Maria Portinari's collar. It's depicted on her both in her betrothal portrait and also in a portrait like about 10 years later. And this, some people have asked me if I made it. I did not. Armor and Castings made this amazing piece. And it is not made out of beads. It is not made out of, there was something else. Someone asked me if it had been woven. This is cast. Each individual piece is cast, right? And then the pieces are hand enameled. So they have to be painted with enamel and then fired, right, for the enamel to set. And then the gems are set, and then the pieces are all assembled. So even though these are all cast pieces, there's still a crazy amount of handwork that goes into making this actually be a collar and not just a series of pieces. Now, why does this trigger people? They say if I'm dressed in just my kirtle, I should not wear a collar because collars like this were only worn on special occasions. Well, I say prove it. show me a text that says from the 15th century that says women only wore their nice collars if they were out and about for special occasions. Until such, I'm going to just wear this nice little bit of bling in a nod to my rank as a countess, and that I'm inviting you all into my private solar for a lovely medieval sewing party. I didn't bring shoes with me to show because honestly, my shoes are still filthy dirty from Handsewing and I need to clean them and condition them. So I could have done that today. Maybe I'll do that in the next sewing party, which is scheduled for tomorrow morning Asia time, tomorrow evening America's time. Yeah. Okay, so any questions about the final outfit? Well, final for today. Normally, there will be another layer that goes over top of this if I were actually going to go out and about in public, say in the 15th century specifically. The only women who walked around dressed like this were probably servants or farmers. But for the most part, if you went out and about as a noble lady, you would wear a gown over top of this. The exception being women who are depicted adventuring in quests, for example, in 15th century literature, they are depicted in just their kirtles, which is an interesting thing, even though they're supposedly noble women, which is an interesting thing to note. Okay, so moving on. Is it actually comfortable? Is which part? The whole outfit is very comfortable. The color, it's a little heavy, but it's not like I feel it in any kind of uncomfortable way. I can feel its presence. It's present. It is certainly there, and I can fully detect it. But it doesn't hurt or anything like that, no. And the gown itself is extremely comfortable. This is honestly, this is probably one of my favorite articles of clothing in my entire wardrobe, medieval or modern. Yeah, it's super comfortable, it's super convenient, and it's super flexible. And some of you heard me say, and I mean this, I've done kickboxing workouts in this kirtle. So yeah, that should tell you how flexible it is. Okay, so now on for the sewing part of today's Getting Dressed and Medieval Sewing Party. So I mentioned that I have a bunch of stockings to repair. Oh boy. 2 weeks of living medievally and dancing has really done a number on these stockings. Let me just demonstrate for you some of the holes that I'm talking about. My feet are evil, apparently, and the way I dance and walk everywhere is probably not the best thing for my footwear. So what I'm going to be doing today then instead of just patching, which is what I've been doing, I've been patching holes piecemeal. I've decided no more. Stop them. Stop the insanity. I'm just going to actually cut out entirely new soles basically and just sew them right onto this on the outside so that the new sole in the new heavy duty linen will take the brunt of that. And the heavy duty linen I'm going to be using is this fustian, which is now covered in cat fur, I just realized. So it happens when you're gone for a month and the kitty sitter is wonderful, but only here for a limited time. The kitties get into trouble the other times. So that is what I'm working on today. What is everyone else going to be working on? And I'm just going to go ahead and now move the camera to be more, sorry, the cat's made some adjustments necessary. When Chimi started running off with my Ethernet cable, bastard, I had to do some things and it made the moving a little hard. Anyway, yeah, what is everyone else working on today? I will say I prefer to be working on something new, but someone has to fix these stockings or they're going to continue to have holes in them. And that is certainly not a good thing. Okay, there we go. Okay, nice. Custom cat fluff insulation. Yep, that is exactly right. Extra. Oh, I should have shown you. I had to defer the settee on which I sit for this. Looked like it was a cat fur settee, and I spent half an hour removing that fur earlier. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is grab my scissors. I'm also today I am drinking a sencha that I bought in Tsushima, Japan, about a month and a bit ago. And no, sencha is not a beverage for medieval Europeans. It is a beverage for medieval Koreans and Japanese, though. But in a medieval home companion, which is a book I would recommend, but I can't show it to you because I left it in America with my condottiero, Ryan Gifford. Medieval Home Companion actually contains tisane recipes, so herbal tea recipes that are actually recommended not just for health purposes, but for beverages. So some of you have asked me, well, what about beverages for medieval people? And I said, well, I found, they drink diluted wine, at least half and half water and wine, and small beer, which is the second brewing of the beer. So it's only got like 1% or 2% alcohol at maximum. But I actually finally found evidence of completely non-alcoholic beverages, those being tisanes. I don't know how we pronounce it in English, tisane in French. And Medieval Home Companion actually has several different herbal tea recipes, basically, for medieval people. And he talks about serving them as beverages to guests. So yeah. Okay, brilliant. So first thing I'm going to do actually is going to just lay out my fabric and line it up to the foot that needs repairs. The holes I put in these things, it's just amazing. Oh, there is a sword somewhere around here. The cats did something that knocked it down, though, so I don't know where it is at this moment. Ah, kitties for the win. So these cut cloth, some people have also asked about knitting in medieval clothing, and we don't have much evidence of knitting for medieval clothing in Western Europe. There is evidence we've extant knit stockings from Egypt, from like Coptic Egypt, from ancient Roman Egypt. We also have evidence of knit stockings, hosen as we would call them in 15th century English, from Constantinople up to the 12th century, I think, and also from Spain. There are knit stockings from Spain in the 12th century as well. But mainland Europe, we have almost no evidence of, or none. I haven't found any. People have told me they have evidence, but I haven't found evidence of knit stockings in Europe until the 16th, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, mainland Europe until the 16th century. Before that, all evidence points to what are called cut cloth stockings. They had knitting. It's not that they didn't. We have knit pouches, for instance, and in Spain especially, we have knit pillowcases, knit hats, but not knit stockings for whatever reason. Um, Beyond the 12th century, it's like there's this loss of technology or a shift. I don't know. But even in Spain, where they had very advanced knitting techniques, all the knit garments, all the knit items seem not to be stockings. Uh, will I be seeing Dr. Kim Min-ji to begin my hanbok, my historic hanbok project, in November? So some of you might know, I am embarking on a fantastic new research adventure with Dr. Kim Min-ji, or Dr. Min-ji Kim, as we would say in English. She is a world-renowned expert on the history of hanbok, and she is coming to Daegu, and I'm going to meet up with her in Daegu and in Korea, and we're going to go to museums all over Korea, and I'm going to get to examine firsthand by touching his medieval Korean garments. And I'm going to be examining them specifically with an eye to how the order of construction, which layers came first, which stitches are used for which layers, what is the prevalence of backstitch or running stitch or stab stitch or blind stitch, right? So I'm actually going to be doing some apparently completely new research in the field of historical Korean clothing, because apparently, according to Dr. Kim, to Min-ji Kim, no one has looked at medieval Korean garments, historical Korean garments, from the perspective of which layers came first, the order of operations. And I'm really keen. So this Min-ji, she's super warm and friendly, and we're going to have her on the channel live stream in February to talk about medieval Korean clothing. And she's going to take me to the museums, and I'm actually going to get to touch and hold historical Korean garments. I'm so super excited. I really am. Oh, I should have brought my linen smoother back with me. This is what happens when I don't have a condottiero here to help me out and fetch things. My cats are unfortunately decorative, but not useful. Yeah. Oh, I seem to have missed. Are all the clothes she's wearing made from 100% cotton? The smock is linen, and the kirtle is wool, and the kerchief is linen. And these stockings are linen. So linen or wool, no cotton. Yeah, good question. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to pin this onto the bottom of the stocking. It was ironed, then the cat sat on it. Oh, kitties, 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 kitties. Any other kitty lovers out there? So we actually know that medieval people repaired their garments extensively, not just because we actually have some extant garments with repairs, but in expense accounts and household expense accounts, we actually see repair bills for garments that have been sent for repairs. And everyone, across the entire hierarchy, from, in the case of the House of Howard household books, from the Duke down to the page, everyone's garments got sent for repairs. So yeah, it's even this idea that, rich people have always worn a dress once, like that myth about Marie Antoinette. Actually, I don't know if it's true or not because I haven't really looked into it. But there's this, this urban legend, at any rate, that Marie Antoinette never wore a dress more than once. I don't know if that's true, but that's 300 years past the Middle Ages. So, medieval kings and queens, they wore their clothes more than once, and they repaired them. So, yeah. And thankfully, we know this from a multitude of sources, both documentary and visual evidence, or not, but documentary and archaeological evidence, which is fantastic when those two things align. But yeah, even the Duke of Norfolk in the 15th century had all of his garments sent for repair on a regular basis. Well, I can't tell you all of his garments, many of his garments sent for repair on a regular basis. Jazz from Tajikistan. Nice. Thank you for sorry, Ayaz, you're from Tajikistan. That is so awesome. Wow. Tajikistan is actually on my list of places I would like to visit. along with Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. Like just that whole part of the world I'm really fascinated by. I love riding horses, so seems like the right place for me. I love big green spaces, nature, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. I am actually originally American. I'm from Delaware originally, but I immigrated a long time ago to Germany, and then on and off, I've lived in Korea over the last 11 years. So I'm really more of a citizen of the world than I would say American. And where I'm from is a very tricky question usually. Yeah. Dilnoza, lovely to meet you. Yeah, all of my fur babies are kitties. For those who want kitty content, I have my Kitties of the Palace channel. I live stream them every day, sleeping or cuddling or grooming each other. Although lately they've been they've been walking away after I turn the camera on them. Little jerks. Yeah. So if you want to see the Contessa's kitties in their full splendor, Kitties of the Palace for the win. Oh yeah, Bill knows I'm so excited to it is on my like in the next year I would really like to get to that part of the world. I love riding and I love fresh air and I love being in green spaces and being out in nature. So the steppes really just call to me. Yeah. You look like a fellow Austrian. Ja, Österreicherin bin ich ja nicht. Ähm, obwohl ich doch mal 12 Jahre lang in Deutschland gewohnt habe. Dort auch gearbeitet. Ja. Oh, where did things go? I came back and this room, my studio was literally a disaster. It looked like the cats had just taken a wrecking ball to it, which they probably did. Their bodies were the wrecking ball. It's what happens when I'm not here. They actually do protest my absence. People who say cats cannot be affectionate towards their human servitors don't understand cats. My cats are super affectionate, just in a kitty way, not in a doggy way. Yeah, Dilnoza, I promise when I'm heading to Tajikistan, I will let everyone know. Um, yeah, I'm excited. I don't know how many people still live on the steppes and in yurts in Tajikistan, but I really love the idea of a nomadic steppes life, experiencing it at least for a brief time, and who knows, maybe for longer. You know, I worked on a horse farm growing up, and I love doing all that sort of stuff. I love tending to animals, and I love taking care of a farm, and I love doing handcrafts and, you know, chasing after horses who run away. Yeah, I'm definitely not typical in that regard. I don't necessarily want to go travel just I don't want to travel actually just to experience the beautiful side of a place. I like to experience the real culture and the real history as much as that is possible. I meant to grab, I might I might have to momentarily, and I do mean momentarily, run away to grab my travel pouch, which has all of my pins in it. I meant to grab that, and then Chimi started running away with the Ethernet cable, and I got distracted. Yeah, yeah, Ryan. Chimi ran away with the Ethernet cable while it was attached to the camera. Kitties for the win. Let's see here. Kitties for the win. Oh, is Jazz? Yeah, I love London as well. I love the mural. Oh, thank you. My tapestry. Thank you, Rino. What time period history is my favorite? Oh, that's hard. What period of time is my favorite? Yeah, I don't even know if I have a favorite. I have the one I'm focusing on now. I guess in terms of overall everything put together, I love the beautiful side of the 15th century, and I phrase it that way on purpose. I love the beautiful side of the 15th century because we know enough about dance to reasonably recreate it. There's still this kind of romantic courtly culture that's running through, at least at the level of the aristocracy, all these fun courtly games they play. There's fantastic art and music being created. The clothing is really interesting and fun and sexy. There's lots of handcrafts. So I really do like the 15th century in general. But in other places in Korea, that's in Europe, in Korea, it's the Shilla dynasty that really interests me a lot. The Shilla dynasty is the first millennium, more or less, and that's the golden era for Korea. And they have fantastic clothing. They've got very interesting culture, very egalitarian society, beautiful art. Yeah, we don't know anything about dance, unfortunately, from that part of the world in that time, but still, yeah, it really depends on the time and place. But in general, in terms of clothing, I'm interested in so many different kinds of fashion, so many geographies and histories. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to say what a favorite is. Do I practice bloodletting? No. Phlebotomy? No. I do not practice phlebotomy. No one should practice phlebotomy. I like living. I like staying healthy and alive. No. Yeah, that's a good point. People often ask me, do you want to go and live back in the Middle Ages or the 15th century or any period in the past? And the answer is no. To any pre-antibiotic era. No, I do not want to live then. I enjoy reenacting and recreating and experiencing the beautiful aspects of past societies and past cultures. But let me tell you, any time and place where getting a tiny cut could result in septicemia and no treatment for it, no, thank you. I'm good. In fact, I wouldn't even want to travel back to the Middle Ages myself, even if they invented time machines. No, thank you. I'd be happy to look through it, like through a window, and observe safely from my side of the window, but I wouldn't want to go back. I know too much about it and understand too much about the total aspects of medieval society to really want to go back and live there myself. No, thank you. Even though the past isn't as gruesome and awful as, a lot of modern people think it was, thanks to weird urban legends that go around. No. Yeah. Oh, you got a cough. I'm sorry. That leg is going to have to go. Yeah, Daniel. Yeah. I mean, if you think that in the past, most broken limbs resulted in amputation, especially, God forbid, if it was a compound fracture. So no, I'm good. I mean, people imagine knights dying these glorious battlefield deaths, but the reality of pre-modern combat in any era, in most places, is that soldiers didn't die on the battlefield. They died of their wounds several days later from septicemia. That's how Richard the First of England died. That's how Diego de Cavagna died. He got an arrow to the knee. This, late 15th century Southern Italian condottiero, arrow to the knee, dead in 3 days. So, no, thank you. I'm good. Yeah. Okay. So, as you see, I've basically cut out a new sole for the hosen, or as we call them in modern English, the stocking. And now I'm going to have to go and fetch my actual sewing supplies, which, as I said, I left in the pouch, which is right outside the room. Okay, everyone, sit tight. I will be back in literally 5 seconds, as long as I don't trip and kill myself on something the cats have put in my way. 5 seconds, right back. Okay. See, I have a bag of holding with projects in it that I take out with me when I'm out and about, including a tripod, so that when I take walks and go places or just go out for food or whatever, then I still have a project with me to work on. And so in this bag is not only my current other project that I'm working on, but also my lotus pouch sewing, portable sewing kit, which is where my thread is. Oh, I'm bleeding. Apparently I stuck when I reached my hand in my bag of holding, I went right into a pin, and now I've turned some of my white thread red. Oh well, whatever, it's just blood. And also my needles and pins are in here. So you have a little silk medieval, oh, stained on that side, little silk medieval pouch in which I keep my sewing things. And then when I'm out and about, I can just, if I'm riding the train or the metro or in a taxi or going somewhere, I can break out my sewing and work on the thing on my way there. So these are these are the so-called bullets. They're not bullets though. These are medieval needle cases, but on the TSA scanners or on the security scanners at airports, these look like bullets. And so I invariably get inspected. But I also, my bags get inspected if I put them in my checked baggage when I'm flying places. So, I'm damned one way or the other. So I've decided it's just better to take them with me in the carry-on so I can explain what they are. Although my trip from Chicago to Taipei a week and a half ago, or almost 2 weeks ago at this point, the TSA security agent actually knew what they were. He knew they were medieval needle cases because he was a Ren Fair guy. I couldn't believe it. He actually knew what they were. He literally, he pulled my bag aside because he wanted to look. He opened up, he looked, and he went, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Oh, uh, they're needle cases." He said, "Yeah, I know what they are. You're fine." I was so shocked. Anyway, in one of them, the one with the red, I keep pins, and in the one with the yellow, I keep needles. We actually don't have don't have much evidence in the way of evidence the other way around. The red one are my needles, the yellow one is my pins. I don't have much or anything actually in the way of evidence of pin cushions in the 15th century, like an actual cushion into which you push pins. There is a wedding trousseau from Italy from like 1506 that unfortunately I only have the English translation, and I hate that because I don't trust translators. It mentions the word pincushion in English as being part of this woman's wedding trousseau. The problem with that is that, you know, they may be translating the word and using the modern meaning of whatever the Italian word was. So I still don't count that as evidence of actual pincushions until I can actually find the Italian original document of this 1506 Florentine wedding trousseau. And yes, in my past life, I was indeed a translator until the machines literally ate my job and my career field. But that's why I don't trust other people's translations, because I know how easy it is to misinterpret specialty words, especially if you use modern dictionaries to come to your conclusions instead of looking at the medieval or historical use of that word. Let me see. I'm currently perusing YouTube Live. I think what you're doing is very fascinating and oddly useful. Classic skills, live beyond trends, very cool, Miss Contessa. Well, thank you, H. Long. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much for that lovely comment. Oh, who is that guy I'd seen on our live stream last time? That was my condottiero that you saw getting dressed. So if you want to see how men got dressed in the 1480s in Italy, a couple of weeks ago, I did a live stream and we demonstrated getting dressed for a night in 1480 in Italy. So you can see what that process was like. Daniel, thank you for the compliment on the tapestry. That was not 10 seconds. It was 5. I would have been an adventurous soul, but I took an arrow to the knee. Yeah, exactly. Did you sew all the clothes you have on as well? Yes, Dilnoza. Gosh, I'm sorry. I don't know where the accent is on your beautiful name. I apologize for butchering it. Yes, I sewed everything I'm wearing, and everything I'm wearing, I sewed entirely by hand. No machine stitched anything. So yeah, not only did I sew it all, I also made the patterns for everything. So I don't use commercial patterns. I don't use anyone else's patterns. I make my own patterns. Yeah, George Washington did die from phlebotomy. A lot of famous people have died from phlebotomy. That is absolutely true. I cannot argue with that. Phlebotomy is a dangerous practice. The amount of casualties from our example, the Civil War, off the battlefield is horrifying. Yeah, Daniel, 100%. People just don't realize that the glorious death on the field of battle is not on the field of battle for the most part. Mostly it's hours or days later. If you're really unlucky, it's days later from septicemia. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, see, and even I love historical Persian culture as well. Medieval Persian clothing is so beautiful. And medieval Persian food, oh my God, delicious. I have a medieval Persian cookbook somewhere in my bookshelf. Should have brought that out. I have a medieval Persian cookbook. Well, I have a translation and printed modern copy of a medieval Persian cookbook, and the recipes are lick your lips delicious sounding. And I have made some of them. Maybe I'll do that as my one of my Contessa cooking live streams. Medieval Persian cooking in a modern kitchen. Yeah, I do. I love and Persian medieval Persian clothing for men and women. So elegant, just so elegant, and very practical actually, even for modern purposes. The layers, especially. Yeah, mm. Just like the clothing of the Mughal Empire, especially in the 16th century, really beautiful. I am not Amish. I wish I could put that as a pinned post. I'm not Amish. You can tell I'm not Amish because you can see a whole lot of skin here. Amish women would wear a collar up to here, and they definitely wouldn't be wearing a rich blue gown like this, and definitely they wouldn't be wearing jewelry like this. Remember, the Amish society is all about modesty for men and women and simplicity and living a simple life, hence why they avoid the use well, they used to completely avoid all things modern and any kind of electricity or everything, but that's becoming less and less common. But still, no, not Amish, 15th century French, actually. Oh, thank you, kids stuff. Appreciate you. The movie Gone with the Wind captured the glory of the battlefield perfectly. Yeah, Gone with the Wind, good one. Of course, The Field Glory also did a good job on capturing the glory of the battlefield pretty much right at the beginning of the damn movie, which I saw when I was 11 and it traumatized me, in case you're wondering. Greetings. Super. Hallöchen. Oder, tut mir leid. Grüß dich. Grüß dich. Schön, dass, schön, dass, schön, dass du da bist. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Harold. Much appreciated. I need to reposition the sole. It got a little crooked. I think I was getting too excited about what I was talking about, and so the sole on the bottom of the stocking is needed to be straightened up. So if you are so-called resoling your stockings, as I am, it's actually kind of tricky because you have to work from the inside, and you don't have quite. It's much easier if you're making a stocking from scratch in some cases, but I also don't like wasting. So I am a big fan of repairing all of the things until they can't be repaired anymore and then finding another use for it, which is the medieval circular economy, by the way, or the pre-modern circular economy, not just medieval. Before the second industrial or third industrial revolution, whatever you want to call the industrial revolution that started in the 18th century, before that industrial revolution, people went to great lengths to use everything they had and reuse it and reuse it and reuse it until it literally disintegrated into dust. So, I think we could learn a lot actually in that regard from the medieval approach to consumption and to usage. I think we could solve a lot of our modern climate crisis issues and societal issues if we actually took the good things from medieval practice, medieval society, and applied them to today. For instance, people interacted for real, face to face. And I know I'm saying this on a live stream, so there's a lot of hypocrisy here, but hear me out. I do this because I know many of you throughout the world couldn't have access to me and to the things I can share and do and say and do for you and with you unless I do this live stream thing. But of course, I prefer to actually do it on live with real people. And medieval people did not isolate themselves behind technology or even behind books necessarily. They interacted on a regular basis. They danced together, they played games together, they told stories together. Someone would read from a book aloud for other people to hear. So, I think the interactivity of medieval society could really, truly help us overcome a lot of the mental health issues that we have in modern society. I think a lot of mental health issues stem from our isolation from each other, our physical isolation. And I hope that these live streams do help people with mitigate that sense of isolation to some degree. But the reality is that there's a certain energy in face to face human interaction that cannot be replicated by a screen. Again, I know it's ironic coming from me, here live streaming for all of you, but we do what we can. So I really do think there are plenty of aspects of medieval society from which we could happily learn and live a happier life. Um, Medieval medical practices are probably not one of them, though. Oh, you can't sew anymore, Harold? I'm really so sorry to hear that. But Harold, have you tried needle threaders? So for those who don't know, there is actually a little relatively simple device, very low tech, called a needle threader, and it can really help you. It's really great for threading needles. Look up needle threader and you'll see what I'm talking about. You might, if you ever had one of those pre-made little mini sewing kits, hotels used to provide them actually, and there was a little coin-like thing in it, and you ever wondered what that coin-like thing was? It's a needle threader. Um, can I talk about Christmas memories? Christmas memories? Do you mean Christmas memories from the Middle Ages? Christmas in the Middle Ages was a party. It's really funny. People think that there's a war on Christmas now. There is not. And you know who launched the first war on Christmas? The Puritans in the 17th century. So the first war on Christmas was by Christians on Christians. Medieval Christmas was a party. It was 12 days of feasting and revelry and gaming and gambling and dancing and flirtation and masked escapades. It was a real time. It was a time of debauchery. Medieval Christmas was. So this idea of Christmas being a solemn, um, family-oriented affair is an invention of the 19th century, as far as I can tell. Literally an invention of the 19th century. It was not that in the Middle Ages, and for most of the history of Christmas, it was not that. It's a good party if the Puritans ban it. Just saying. Thank you, dysentery. I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess I do sometimes feel like a one-person party, but my kind of party is not necessarily everyone's kind of party. And that's okay. Everyone should be able to enjoy their own thing in their own way. Using a nail brush is actually pretty good at threading a needle. Oh, using a nail brush? Like, I never thought about that. Using a nail brush is usually pretty good at threading a needle. Huh. Let me see. Hold on a minute. I'm in 8th century religious history right now, working through the centuries. This is so interesting to hear your point of view. Oh, welcome to my live stream, Jake. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, 8th century in which part of the world of religious history? Are we talking like world religion or Europe, or are we talking, that's the rise of Islam? The 8th century is when Islam really starts to coalesce and take real hard shape in the 8th century. That's still during the Muslim conquest, basically, of Northern Africa and Southern Europe. Yeah, most people don't realize that places like Sicily got conquered. Sicily and Malta were conquered as part of the Arab conquest, right? Spain. Some people are aware that Spain was Muslim. Majority of the Iberian Peninsula was Muslim for many centuries. It's hard to imagine now, Portugal and Spain being these, well, once until recently being these very Catholic countries, but from the 7th century on, from the 7th and 8th century on, they weren't. Yeah. Yundein. Yeah, I'm currently in Daegu actually, but I am from Delaware. I think Brian said that actually. Let's see. Is that necklace based on a real medieval piece? Tiffy, it is a replica of a piece that was owned by Maria Portinari. If you look up Maria Portinari, her portrait, you'll see her wearing this. There are two portraits that depict her wearing this. So yes, it is a replica by Armor and Castings, and Armor and Castings has a lot of really amazing pieces. If you go to their website, armorandcastings.com, ARMOUR and castings.com, and check out their amazing collection of replica medieval jewelry. You enter the code Contessa10, you'll get a 10% discount on your purchase. So yeah. What is going on, Corey? This is a medieval sewing party. I am working on repairing my 15th century hosen, stockings as we call them modernly, while discussing anything, any kind of medieval history topic that comes to mind, sometimes not medieval, and answering people's questions. So that's what's going on. Let me see. Not to be mean, but why does she kind of look like AI? It's not mean. I don't know. Why do I look like AI? I'm not. I'm real. I'm a real person. I can show you the thread on which I just bled to show that I'm a real person. And give me a moment. I'll probably prick myself again, and then I can show you the blood actually flowing. What century is my phone from? Yeah, that's a good question. I am a bit of a time traveler. Do I have a tutorial for my head covering? I don't have a tutorial on making it. I am going to be doing a Zoom workshop on making it from scratch in, oh, maybe not September. Yeah, in September, which I know is shortly. So stay tuned for that announcement. I'm going to be doing a workshop on making this kerchief. It will be a 3-part workshop, and we will teach. I think that means I'm going to start next weekend. Actually, time has been flying for me. We will doing a 3-part workshop, and we will cover everything from beginning to end, all the hand sewing techniques you need to know, cutting it out together, laying it out, measuring it out, cutting it out, sewing it together, all techniques you need to do. So that will be available for registration on my website, thecreativecontessa.com. So I need to probably go and schedule that now. It's going to be probably for the next 3 weekends. All the sessions are recorded, so even if you can't make all of the sessions, it's no problem. You can still participate. You can catch up on the recording after the fact. And that is a paid workshop, but I do a pay what you can format. So you just enter in the tip field whatever amount you can afford, whatever you think is fair for the workshop, because it is a live workshop. And we actually interact via Zoom, and you can show me your work and I can answer your questions and give you tips. So it is a paid workshop, but again, it's a pay what you can situation, because I don't believe that money should stop people, or a lack of money should stop people from learning and engaging in creativity. What year am I in? It is now 1475. Let me see. What got you into the medieval times, and for how long have you been doing this sewing? So I have been fascinated by the olden days, in quotes. Oh, see, I just poked myself right there. That's probably going to start bleeding in a moment. Oh yeah, there it goes. I've been fascinated by the olden times from my earliest memories, literally from my like 2-year-old Contessa memories. I've been fascinated by the beauty and romance of the Middle Ages. And then, of course, I got fascinated by the ugly parts as well, but I don't want to recreate the ugly parts. So, yeah. I've been sewing since I was 14. I started with a sewing machine, and then I eventually transitioned to hand sewing only, but I'm going to have to go back to using a sewing machine, because with all this content creation, I actually haven't had time to keep up with all of the sewing that I need to do in order to keep up with the wear and tear on my garments. So I'm going to be looking for a used sewing machine, and I'm going to be machine sewing the long seams. But yeah, been sewing for a while. I cover my hair 100% of the time, so I would absolutely love to have one. Thank you. Yeah, let me tell you, the 15th century kerchief, it's a fantastic thing, and it's flexible. For instance, if I want to keep the sun out of my face, there we go. If the sun is gone and I don't care, then it can fold back, right? I can pull it further forward on my head. I can sit it further back on my head. There's lots of options. And I got so excited that I actually unclasped my collar. So yeah, if you're interested in making this kerchief, couvre-chef, as they're called in 15th century English, give me a couple of days, then check out thecreativecontessa.com. You can register there for the workshop. It will be starting next weekend. Yeah, these months have been flying by, right? Amish, not an Amish woman. I am not an Amish woman. This is a 15th century depiction of a 15th century woman. What on earth is all over my hands? This is a depiction of a 14 sort of this outfit in total is like 1450s to 1480s Franco-Burgundian. Do you find there are costume lineage since you construct clothes? D. Dickinson, can you clarify that question a little bit? Um, what do you mean by costume lineage? Well, happy to answer the question if you just clarify. Wow, I'm really behind on the. My goodness. Um, let me see. Um, I actually do have an old-fashioned sewing machine. I have a treadle sewing machine. Unfortunately, in the move, somewhere along the way, the metal parts that actually hold it, allow it to come up out of the table, out of the cabinet, have bent, and so I can't get it out of the cabinet. It's very frustrating because I love my treadle sewing machine. I have sewn two medieval pavilions using my foot-powered foot treadle sewing machine. In fact, if you go back a couple of weeks ago and see my live streams about my medieval pavilion, you can see the pavilion that I made using that machine. I much prefer to not have a non-electric one, but the one I have two. One is back in the US, can't access it. And then the one I have here, like I said, it's broken. So yeah, sigh, very sad. Is there anything from history that you wish you could bring into the modern day use? Oh goodness, yes. For one, the way people actually danced socially, like properly danced, and not just kind of got on the floor and wiggled like they were having an epileptic seizure, right? Proper dancing with each other on a regular basis to live music, not at a club, just go out into the town square and dance. And there are some parts of Europe where this does still happen, like Eastern Europe, especially Greece, some parts of the Balkans that still happens. So that aspect, actually big big communal feasts together, big communal meals together with more than just your immediate family, like where community actually communes more frequently and as a matter of daily course. The handcrafts, I definitely think we need to get back into making things with our hands and making them ourselves. Consumption patterns, we need to reduce our consumption. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to stop buying things every time we get depressed. We need to stop buying a new thing when something breaks a little bit. Instead, we should be repairing things and reusing them and finding other uses for them until they disintegrate. And then we can talk about getting rid of it. Right. So, yes, the medieval circular economy, definitely something I would want to bring into the modern world. People used to actually memorize information because books were crazy expensive and not everyone could afford books. Books were a luxury item until the 18th century, well into the 18th century. Books were a luxury item. Even with the printing press, they were still a luxury item. But before the printing press, they were super duper duper a luxury item. So instead, people memorized things. People actually committed things to memory. We need to go back to that instead of relying on our phones to be our external hard drive brain. Oh, let's see, what else? People used to compose poetry on a regular basis just for fun and then share it with people, memorize it and share it. Oh, goodness. Yes, there's so many things. And honestly, for men especially, clothing, 15th century men's clothing, so superior to anything we have in the West now. And I don't care if it's 15th century European, any part of Europe. 15th century Syrian, 15th century Persian, 15th century Indian, all superior to the clothes we wear today from a sartorial perspective. And not all historical clothing is impractical to wear in the modern world. Yeah, there's a lot of good things. The active lifestyle, like people walked everywhere. Yes, some people rode horses, But even people who could afford horses still walked a lot of places. They didn't always ride a horse, and even horseback riding requires a hell of a lot more energy than getting behind the wheel of a car and driving someplace. I think on the whole, the interconnectivity of the medieval world is something we need to get back to. At the community level, at the bigger regional level, at the interregional level, we have become so isolated from one another thanks to our technology. Again, I see the irony of me saying that while I'm sitting here on a live stream in front of a smartphone. I get it. But one of the things I love about actually doing medieval living history events is that we go low tech and we go on live and we actually do all those things together. We do handcrafts together, we dance together, we feast together, we play games, like real games that you actually touch and move pieces around, right? It's a real world, not a virtual world. But definitely, I wouldn't. Nutrition in the Middle Ages was actually generally terrible because they had some really weird ideas about foodstuffs. For instance, the rich people all ate white bread. White bread was a luxury item in the Middle Ages, unlike today. And so you have all these rich people eating nothing but white bread. Very not good for you. Also, sugar was considered to be medicinal, which we definitely know is not true. So yeah, there's some certain aspects about medieval nutrition I wouldn't want to take over, but there's also a lot of really delicious medieval recipes that are actually nutritionally dense. White bread is not among them, though. Let's see. Let me see. Yeah, Dilnoza, yeah, the way they would take time to eat together at one long table and spend time together. Yeah. And just honestly, also the slow pace of life. The pre industrial pace of life was much healthier, I think. We moved too quickly, frankly. And I don't mean like physically, as in we get on a jet and we move too quickly, although we might find that we're not doing ourselves any favor in that regard. But what I mean is that the pace of life is too fast. We are hyper scheduled, we're over scheduled, we're super stressed because of it. The clocks, the invention of the gear clock versus, say, a water clock or a hourglass, really didn't do us any favors because the second you can track time with such precision was the second we started insisting that time needed to not be wasted. And then the Industrial Revolution took that to the next level, of course. So I think we need to slow down. We need to stop measuring success based on productivity. There have got to be other, and I know this is ironic coming from someone like me who's always creating or sewing or making something, but hear me out. Hypocrisy aside, we need to stop measuring the value of our existence on productivity in terms of dollars and cents or won or rupees or pounds or any currency, right? I think we need to have a reevaluation of our existence in the modern world and maybe reevaluate how it is we live our lives. I don't know if there's a way that we can adopt a slower pace of life and still have some of the wonderful things we have, for example, modern medicine. I don't know. Can we have modern medicine without doctors hyperscheduling their lives and researchers hyperscheduling their lives? It's a good question. Sorry, trying to get yeah, the cutlery they used was also very interesting. I actually have some reproduction 15th century cutlery. I thought about grabbing it and bringing it for some show and tell, but I didn't. I'll bring it. I'll try to remember to bring it to tomorrow's medieval sewing party. Yeah, so for those who are wondering, I've got another medieval sewing party scheduled for tomorrow, and then Monday will be medieval story time. What about the apprenticeship system? Would you want to bring that in the 21st century? Absolutely. And in fact, in places like Germany, the apprenticeship system is still alive and well. Even though it's been modernized, there's still the idea of apprenticing for 3 years, learning a trade in a formal environment, in a formal training environment, and then becoming a journeyman and then becoming a master. I think apprenticeship is definitely something that we should import into America 100%. We used to have it. We had an apprenticeship system. I'm not certain when it died and went away. I would assume though probably during the Middle Ages. or not the Middle Ages, sorry, probably, by the end of the 19th century, maybe. Bring back lyra pipes on hoodies. Yeah, lyra pipes. They're pretty cool. They make exactly. I think the hoodie would be entirely transformed by the addition of a lyra pipe. 1,000,000%. May I know your first name? Mine is Courtney. I knit and crochet and sew. Ah, you spent your summers in an Amish community and was shocked when I learned that most people can't sew a button. Yeah, people might know me as Rachel, but Contessa is my title, of course. Madonna Contessa the Countess. Yeah, I actually grew up in Amish country. So I was surrounded by the Amish, went to the Amish markets. They were always driving their horse-drawn buggies all over the place, and we would buy, especially they're known for quality meat, for good meat quality animals that live a nice healthy life and that are not butchered in factories. So we used to go to the Amish meat market all the time. Don't you worry about how women were treated? Well, man, women are still treated pretty badly in most places in the world. I'm just going to put that out there. Uh, I used to thought we lived in a modernized, liberated society. But in America, United States of America, women couldn't get mortgages and credit cards, and in some cases own cars in their own name until the end of the 1970s. The end of the 1970s. So women in America haven't been liberated for that long. Liberated, and we're going backwards fast. So it really depends on what you mean on how women were treated, and it depends on where specifically, and specifically what decade. Remember that the Middle Ages was not a monolith. It's 1,000 years of history. Daddy and a caddy, thank you so much. Super generous as always. Um, you know, people in the Middle Ages is 1,000 years of history. It covers, well, the globe, if you consider the whole period, but specifically medieval Europe as a whole continent. And so the situation is absolutely not the same in Spain as it is in Italy. But even then, within Spain, the situation for women is not necessarily the same in Portugal as it is in Catalonia, as it is in Galicia, as it is in um, uh, Asturias, right? So even within what would be a modern country in any given period, the situation is not going to be the same. So you really can't say that, oh, throughout the whole Middle Ages, women were treated badly. That's actually not true. And in the first millennium, women had many more rights and many more freedoms and were much more emancipated than women were in those same places in Europe for most of the second millennium. Mind blown? Yeah. And you can kind of track this development. Any place that develops a dowry, that's a place where women are valued less and are actually viewed as being an economic burden. Any place that has a bride price, women are viewed as being valuable in the literal sense of that word and as being major economic contributors. So you can watch in the first millennium in most places, women to get a bride, you actually had to pay her family for her loss. They weren't buying her. That's not what a bride price is. People misunderstand the concept of a bride price. The concept of a bride price is financial compensation to her family for the loss of this valuable economic unit in the family. Right. Whereas a dowry is a statement that, well, this woman is going to be an economic burden to you. So we need to make sure that it's not too much of a burden. So we're going to send her with all these goods and this money so that she isn't a burden on your household. So you can track that across, from south to north as the first millennium wears on. When women shift from being a valuable member, literally valuable member of the economy and of society, to being viewed as a burden. And that's not a uniform thing. It's a shift that happens gradually and over time. And it doesn't even happen in all places in Europe, not even across the Middle Ages. The Reformation, though, is when things get really rough for women pretty uniformly in all the places where the Reformation happens, because there's a lot of, the Reformation came with a lot of misogyny. They tossed out the cult, even women's place in the Christian in Christian dogma took a downplay. We went from the medieval church in which Mary is the mother of God, right? And then in under the Protestant Reformation, she's just kind of this woman who gives birth to Jesus, right? So you lose the Marian cult. One of the ways in which women were considered, powerful and valuable and worthy. So anyway, I certainly wouldn't. I'm not saying that women had it all great in the Middle Ages. That's not what I mean at all. I'm just saying that women don't necessarily have it so great now, depending on where you are in the world. Yeah. We still wear the beautiful historical clothes here in Tajikistan. Hopefully, you will enjoy the various clothes and their designs. Dilnoza, I will absolutely love the clothing. I can guarantee you. I'm so excited. Now it feels like I need to start planning a trip, actually. So when would be the best time? When are the best times of year to go to Tajikistan? Tajikistan. I'm very excited. I'm sorry, I've started pronouncing it Kyrgyzstan. Tajikistan. Yeah, it's definitely on my list. I want to ride horses and wear the clothes and shoot a bow from a galloping horse at anything. Don't care what it is. I want to hunt with eagles. I want to milk. I want to milk the mares and the goats and the sheep. I want to spin wool. I want to make a carpet. I want to work on making a carpet. Right? Yeah, I want to do all the things. Oh, I want to dye the fibers using natural dye stuffs. Yeah, I want to do all the things. At Penzic, do they still play chess using people game pieces? Susan, I haven't seen a live chess game in a while. I'll be honest. By live, I mean with humans. So not in a while. Oh goodness, I might be behind. You are right. Fiat currency sucks. It's all about gold and silver. Yep. Let me see. Same time tomorrow night. Yes, Dilnoza. Check the channel. Check the Creative Contessa channel. I think it's also been set up on Facebook, depending on where you're watching from, and on TikTok. It should show there. If you go to my live streams for my channel, it would show you the time for which it's been scheduled. It is basically the same time, I think. I've been scheduling so many things that I'll be honest, I've kind of forgotten. Betsy Ross lives. Yeah, yeah, yeah. John Bandy, appreciate you. I cut my gaming teeth on Mario and Zelda. All the Lyra pipes. Yep, so true. Lots of Lyra pipes in Zelda. Yeah. Well, thank you, Lucius. Really appreciate that. Goodness, I've gotten so behind in chat. Sorry, guys. What caused the shift? Oh, Lori, I'm so sorry. The shift, you're talking about the shift from women being valued. Probably you're talking about the bride price to the dowry, right? Okay, so I actually read a whole book on this a while ago, but it stuck with me. So basically, the shift in how women were valued actually seems to be a question of population. So in the first millennium, there's a lot of instability because we have the Justinian plague that comes along in the 6th century and kills 90% of Europe. Right? Most people aren't tracking the Justinian plague. They focus really hard on the Black Death, which happens more recently to our memory, but the Justinian plague is even more devastating. And that's what actually leads to the true end of the Western Roman Empire and its technology, right? The Justinian plague is the last time that the Roman Senate sits for a long time. So you have this massive die-off. And anytime you have a massive die-off, women get more valuable because women's bodies are the only ones that can actually, reproduce the human species. So you have a shortage of people. And so anytime you have a shortage of people, that automatically increases everyone's value, right? Labor costs go up because suddenly labor is valuable because there aren't enough people to do all the labor. But also women are viewed as not only being able to produce and make and create and be part of the economic production process, they're looked at being part of the human species production process. So as the first millennium wears on, and there are some theories that the rise of Christianity may had something to do with sort of the misogyny that starts developing and the devaluation of women, but I haven't seen any convincing evidence of that. I'm not saying it's not there, I just haven't seen it. But on a practical level, the population starts increasing as the first millennium wears on. And by the time you hit 1000, the population across Europe is actually starting to really boom. And so suddenly there is apparently a surfeit of women instead of a dearth of women. And so the laws of supply and demand, gosh darn it, so their value seems to go down in correlation to that process. And so, that's why it seems that women suddenly stop being, and for some reason, their participation in the economy changes as well. Whereas, especially under the nomadic groups, the more nomadic a society is, it seems the more egalitarian it is, by the way. So, as the nomadic groups that initially came and settled across Europe, starting in like the third century, they've stopped being nomadic. They've settled down. They've become sedentary, and that also seems to line up with women losing value and losing respect and being considered more as a burden rather than as an active part of functioning part of the economy. Yeah, it's complicated, but it does seem it seems in part to be a numbers game. Christianity may have had a part in it. But in places like in Scandinavia and the further north you go, that never really happened. So that loss of value for women never really happened. Yeah. Um, I'm trying to create a medieval dress, but I want to make it out of a purple unknown fabric with thicker threads. I'm wondering if a light purple is out of the realm of your style of dress. No, absolutely not. It would be very easy to create purple, this kirtle, this style of dress that I'm wearing. It would be very easy to create a purple kirtle, or to create a purple fabric, by doing a madder and indigo combination. So you would dye it first in red, maybe. Um, you would dye it first in red. Sorry, there was just a message that came through. I'll get to that later. You would dye it first in madder, which it would give you. It's a root. It's a weed. Actually, it's a cheap, easily available weed in Europe. You would dye it in madder root. That would make it red, and then you could over dye it with woad, another weed that grows everywhere in most places in Europe anyway. And so that combination of madder dye first to get it red, then woad over dye afterwards would give you a purple. And how light it is, if it's the exhaust bath, then it will be a lighter purple. Also, you'll get more of a purple if you add iron shavings to it, for instance, because that will cause an oxidative reaction, which will turn it purple. Although the oxidative reaction can be corrosive to the fabric, so maybe you don't want to do that. Women have it better than ever, no debate. Par Pak 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 Ostrovich, I would say it depends on where you are in the modern world, whether women have it better than ever. Currently, women in America have taken a big downturn, but I'm not gonna go further into that. Um, I imagine the number of proposals you get in college. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm not a university professor though. And Chris, women are still being sold in many places in the world. So again, it depends on where you are, unfortunately. And actually, so this idea that women are sold is it depends on where you are and when you were, but for the most of the Middle Ages, women were not sold off. That's not how it worked. A bride price was not buying the woman. A bride price was paying the family for her loss. She was not considered property. In bride price societies, she was in Western Europe anyway. She was not considered property. So that's just not how that worked. And the dowry is also not a buying or a not buying. And the thing about arranged marriages, this is something people have to remember, is that in many medieval and historical European societies, arranged marriages weren't just arranged for the women. It wasn't a man picking a bride, it was his parents picking his bride. So he didn't even really get a say in the situation. But according to the rules of Christianity, by the way, the woman did have to consent. She had to say, I want this, I will this. Now, you could say she was coerced into it, et cetera, and I won't disagree with that. But there are many places in our modern world where women are still have those kinds of arranged marriages. So it really depends on where you are. Really depends on where you are. Now, and I will say, but I will 100% openly admit that laws about SA, about certain kinds of assault, for example, in the Middle Ages, definitely did not favor the woman. I will openly admit that 100% in many places in medieval Europe. But again, it's not a monolith. It really depends on where you are and when you are. That changes. It's not a constant. And there are times in medieval European history when women had more rights and were more respected than they are in many places now. Iron Age Scandinavia had more positive treatment of women. Darn it. I hate how this works. Not an Amish woman. Let me see. Let me see. Oh, wow, I'm so below. I am, as a survivor of human trafficking, please don't speak unless you know. Yes, some of us have been bought and sold, even now and even in America. Yep, that's what I'm saying, Wolverine. It's exactly what I'm saying. That is exactly my point. Human trafficking continues apace. Also, Wolverine, I'm very sad for you and also very happy for you at the same time. I'm glad you're a survivor of it. Let me see. Chat exploded. Yeah. Oh goodness. Okay, I'm really behind. Oh gosh. Sorry, everyone. I'm afraid I'm going to have to. Oh wow. Okay. Chat has been moving fast tonight. Sorry, everyone, if I missed comments. Oh wow. It's sometimes a little too fast for me to actually sew and keep track of at the same time. Yeah. If you had an authentic, genuine question and not just something cheeky and rude to say, then yeah, please pop the question again in the chat and I'll try to keep a better eye on it. She's moving really fast tonight, as Neva said. Let's see. I am very clearly not Amish. Very clearly not Amish. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The Wolverine, I'm glad you escaped. Seriously. It's a nightmare for me to even think about that. Jesus. Not Amish, not Amish. This is 15th century Franco-Burgundian. Not Amish. You can tell by the jewelry and by the neckline and the color of my dress. Not Amish. Let me see. Also not Mennonite for the same reasons. Background is a replica tapestry of the La Dame à la Licorne, which is in the Cluny, Musée de Cluny in Paris, right? And this is the allegorical representation of the sense of hearing. Yeah, did I make the tapestry behind me? I did not. I bought it on eBay. You can actually buy, this is vintage. This is like 60 or 70 years old, and it was dead stock. So a lot of these tapestries were made back in by tapestry weaving shops back in Belgium and France, not back in Belgium and France, in Belgium and France, back in the 50s or 40s, really 50s, because World War II kind of stopped that, in the 50s through the 70s. And they were generally made actually for tourists. And some of these tapestry weaving shops just went out of business, and their unsold stock remained in a storage unit in France or Belgium, neatly packaged, neatly folded up. And then these storage units have been actually being opened up and sold off. And so you can now buy these vintage replica tapestries woven with real linen and real wool and real silk, dyed with natural dyes, for almost nothing on eBay. So I actually have a video on my YouTube channel. If you look up medieval tapestry, I have a video on buying a tapestry, a bigger one than this actually. One of the Cloisters Hunt of the Unicorn tapestries, the one where the unicorn is purifying the fountain with its horn. Right. I have a video on a replica I bought of that tells you how you can go and buy replica tapestries like this for a fraction of their value. So I'm a big deal hunter too. Yeah. What linen weight do you use for your coif? This coif, this is literally pillowcase weight, because I bought a duvet white linen duvet set from IKEA from their Second Chance area. I think it's called Second Chance in English. And it included these really nice pillowcases. And I was teaching a workshop on making this, and I realized I actually didn't have any of my linen with me. So I turned the pillowcase into this. And I'm kind of sad because it was a really nice white linen pillowcase and made a great linen pillowcase. But yeah, so this is 100%, 100% IKEA linen, pillowcase linen. So it is pillowcase weight, definitely not hanky weight. Hanky weight would be practically transparent. True hanky weight is translucent, at least. Let me see. I'm not going to say anything more about it, except it's still happening. I can't tell you how grateful I am for this candid conversation. Oh, you are very welcome, Wolverine. And yeah, I know it's still happening. Yeah, yeah, it is. One person is pumping the iron and the other's playing the organ. Yeah. So this lady here, she is actually pumping the bellows, and the bellows provide the air for the organ. So this is called a portative organ. It's literally an organ, as you can see, that can be carried around and moved. And so her damsel is operating the bellows to provide the air while the lady plays the organ. Yeah. All of the Dame à la Licorne tapestries, it's an allegory of the five senses plus desire. So if you go to the Cluny's website or look up the Lady in the Unicorn tapestry, see if you can guess which ones are which of the senses by what's being depicted. All five senses are there: sense of taste, sense of touch, sense of hearing, sense of sight. How have I forgotten what the five senses are? Touch, taste, sight, hearing, and then the fifth one is what? Smell, 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 the sense of smell. Good God. It's my weakest sense, actually, is my sense of smell. Yeah, so you can actually tell by looking at the tapestries which of the five senses they are depicting. And these tapestries have a fascinating history. And I apologize for those of you who've heard this before in my medieval sewing party, but I'll repeat it briefly. The discovery of these tapestries is fascinating because I think after the 15th century, in the 16th century, when the chateaus in France all started getting their Renaissance upgrades, this set of tapestries, which was a chambre, it was woven to fit a very specific chamber in the castle. So that's why they're all a different weird shape, because they were fit to cover a specific part of the wall, over the chimney piece, over the door, around a window, etc. And I think that the castle got a Renaissance makeover, right? And 16th century makeover. And so they took the tapestries, they folded them up neatly, and they put them in a chest. And there they stayed until they were rediscovered in the early 20th century. So they are in crazy good condition for a 15th century tapestry. Crazy good condition. Unfortunately, what tended to happen in the 19th century to these tapestries, the ones that were discovered then, the Victorians actually took them and cut them up and turned them frequently into curtains for their windows. These were not, though. These were not, which is kind of the amazing thing about them. Okay, moving on. Let me see. Moving on. Did I get here on the Mayflower? No, but my ancestors did, actually. I have legitimate ancestors who came over on the Mayflower. No, this predates the Mayflower by about two little. You look like Mother Puritan, which is distinct from Mother Nature. Nah, not Mother Puritan at all. Just a 15th century French noblewoman at home. Remember that women have been covering their hair for literally centuries in most parts of the world, not just Europe. So yeah, people covering their hair in a specific way in 17th century England might be, but not for most of history. I only buy 100% cotton tapestries because I'm scared of the moths. Yeah, I mean, the moths are an issue, aren't they? But there are some pretty good natural moth-away herbal mixtures you can either make yourself or buy that are very effective. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the compliment on the necklace. Twitchy, you're alive. Did you just wake up or are you staying up late? Which is it? Oh, it's been so long since I've seen you. I've missed you. I've missed you in the live streams. Yeah, so when in doubt, put your favorite masterpieces in the chest. Oh my God. Puritans would be scandalized by that decadent neckline. Oh yes, so would the Amish. Uh, and also by the neckline. I like everything about this outfit would be scandalizing practically. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Except for the hat. The kerchief would be okay. The kerchief would be acceptable. I think I'm not showing an indecent amount of hair even by Puritan standards. Yeah. Goodness. Oh, there's a knot in my thread. Yep. Okay. Knot out. But I'm definitely excited at the idea of visiting and traveling in and experiencing Tajikistan. That's a very exciting thought to me, I have to say. I was looking actually possible considering a trip to Mongolia to stay with a family, and I still plan to do that at some point as well, to stay with a family in their yurts, working a nomadic family, helping them with the tasks because I actually have those skills already. I'm not like the usual dumb tourist. I actually do have horse sorting skills and riding skills and working with farm animals and hand skills. So, and cooking skills, and I can cook over a fire using a really antiquated equipment. So I think I would actually be an asset to a nomadic family instead of a tourist burden. And I definitely have no problem drinking fermented mare's milk or eating mare's yogurt or any kind of dairy from any kind of animal, honestly. Camel, sheep, uh, goat, whatever. Even by Jewish standards, your hair is fine. It's the collarbones that are truly scandalous. Yeah, they are. Look at these collarbones, baby. Oh, yeah. Oh, Twitchy got a potential new commission, a late 1400s to 1530s Landsconnect kit. Oh my God, Twitchy, are you really sure you want to go down the Landsconnect hole? That therein lies the path to madness, my dear. You might want to reconsider, and or you might want to charge an insanity surcharge on that order. Um, Dilnoza, do you live in a are you watching this live stream from a yurt on the steps? I've seen the solar panels set up to provide electricity to yurt homesteads, so it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. You worked on a farm as the animals and you just stood around and stuck. Well, my horse farm, we didn't stand around at all. It was a busy, busy day. I didn't need to have a gym membership back then. Let me see. In plain American, what is a damned kerchief? William, a kerchief is it's just what this is called. This headpiece, it is a kerchief. That's just what it's called. I don't think there is an American term for it because it's not an American garment. It's a 15th century English garment. And the word bonnet can be confusing because this is definitely not a bonnet. Not even neither by 15th century standards nor by modern standards. Yeah. See, I could even live stream if I come and visit you, Dilnoza. I could live stream from the steps. I thought it would be fun to go visit some of these beautiful steps places like Tajikistan and do a kind of bit as a 15th century noblewoman traveling the world the way Marco Polo did. Obviously, complete fantasy because I don't have evidence of 15th century noblewomen traveling to Asia, but still, I thought it would be a fun bit to do it. And I just imagine myself in full Burgundian splendor, complete with mitre and veil, galloping across the steppes on horseback. Like, how fantastic would that be? Oh, Charlene, thank you. This is a replica of the Maria Portinari collar from the 15th century, from like the 1470s, 1460s to 1470s. And this replica was made by Armor and Castings. And they do a lot of amazing replica medieval jewelry, including, for instance, this ring. Why are my hands so dirty? Including this ring, right, which is a replica of one in the V&A. And you can buy it on their website along with many of their other really gorgeous, reasonably priced pieces, armorandcastings.com. Contessa 10 for an extra 10% discount. Yes, full disclosure, they are a channel sponsor, but it doesn't matter because I was buying their stuff. I bought this myself. This was not a sponsored piece. I paid the full price for this myself because they make really good items and I really love their products. So yeah, Armor and Castings for your medieval jewelry needs. And they cover a wide array of eras and geographies. So they cover ancient Roman all the way up to 17th century. And they are expanding Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Southern Europe, Northern Europe, and they are expanding to other geographies as well. Yeah, highly recommend them. Yeah, there is nothing quite as amazing as galloping on a horse in full like a Burgundian noblewoman, because my dresses with their trains, they drape over the back of the horse like barding. Unfortunately, they're long enough that when the horse poops, the poop sometimes ends up on the train. But thankfully, horse poop is just really digested grass. So, it washes out pretty well. Although there can be some grass stains, but whatever. Uh, oh, have you bought their veil pins as well, Twitchy? Nice to know. Let me see. Is this period or current cultural dress? This is period dress, Gwen. This is 15th century Franco-Burgundian. So specifically, like the whole outfit, kind of like 1460s to 1480s Franco-Burgundian. And Charlene, it is Armor and Castings. Ryan, if you're there, could you pop the name in the thing? ARMOUR, British way of spelling armor, and castings. And unfortunately, links, yeah, so links won't post in the chat. Freaking YouTube roots them right out. But I'm pretty certain there's a link in there. Maybe there's not a link in the description. I'll put a link. I'll put a link in the description, not the description, and in the comments, the actual comments once this video posts. Unfortunately, YouTube is stupid about links in the live stream chat. Stupid is the wrong word. So there used to be a problem of bots and or other miscreants posting links to naughty websites or unwanted websites in the live chat of live streams. And so YouTube resolved that problem by simply making it impossible to post links. Sorry, guys. Armorandcastings.com. ARMOURANDCASTINGS.com. Or if you look up Armor and Castings, it should be the first hit. Should definitely be the first hit. Ooh, frog in my throat. Hold on. Apologies, a little dust in the air. Let me see. Oh, this tapestry. Yeah, this tapestry, this heraldic line. He is super chill, isn't he? I am not Jewish. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, Aluba is 2 other YouTube videos. So true. So are you a hobbyist of period dress, or is this just your personal style? No, at this point, I might consider myself a professional of period dress, since people literally pay me to help them make clothing and advise them on historical fashion. So I think I might have to start just calling myself a professional, actually. Yeah, people actually pay me to consult on historical clothing. And historical medieval material culture, and they pay me to come and teach medieval dance at their events. So I guess that makes me a professional at that point. This is not my personal style per se. I do medieval living history, so I attend medieval living history events, feasts and balls and deeds of arms, that sort of thing, encampments. So these are the kind of clothes I wear at that. I lately, because of this live streaming thing I've been doing, this is what I have been wearing during the day after the live streams, because I don't feel like changing clothes again after a live stream. So I guess it is kind of becoming my personal style, and I wouldn't mind bringing the 15th century kirtle back. I think it's a wonderful, flexible, attractive garment that suits a wide variety of body types. Yep. So I don't know, Gwen, maybe a little bit of both. You look like Julie Delpy. Oh, thank you. You're not the first person who has said that. Julie Delpy is a beautiful woman, so I'll take that. Yeah, definitely twitchy witch. I think at this point I can just say I'm a living historian in all the senses of that word. Let me see. Oh, Mr. Sloth. Hello from Daegu, South Korea. Lovely to welcome you to my community. Please call yourself, don't let the imposter syndrome get to you. It's so legit. Yeah, I do have a bit of imposter syndrome. I will, as confident as I am in so many aspects of my life, there is a bit of the imposter syndrome taking that will try to take me for a ride. But I think we all suffer from that. Everyone gets those. Anyone who has any hint of modesty, anyway, at some point should at least question, things like that before making firm statements. Yeah, let's see. Is there a story behind the tapestry? Wait, let me see. Did I time travel or something? Yeah, you did. Welcome to the 15th century in France. Is there a story behind the tapestry? Yeah, so this tapestry is actually an allegory of the sense of hearing. So you can see the woman, the noble woman, the lady here, capital L, of course, she is playing a portative organ, right? And her damsel over here is actually operating the bellows to provide the air for the organ. So this is an allegory for the sense of hearing. All of the Lady in the Unicorn Tapestry series, each of them is a sense. If you look up, you can find them on the Cluny Museum's website, the Musée du Cluny in Paris, one of the best medieval museums in the world, by the way. So that is the story behind the tapestry. Can I ask what attracted you to this period of dress? That is a good question. I have had a fascination for specifically what we would call the Gothic style in medieval terms. Gothic architecture, Gothic art, Gothic interior decor, Gothic clothing. From my earliest years, I have memories as 2-year-old me looking through the books that my parents had on the bookshelf, their history books, because both of my parents also love history. Shocker there. And just being captivated by like the unicorn, the tapestry, the unicorn, various medieval unicorn tapestries, and the Flemish masters, the art from that era. So I don't know why. It has always called to me for some reason. But then I discovered that there's a lot of periods of historical clothing that call to me across the world, and not even necessarily just historical, but fashion in general. I'm a fashionista in general. I've just specifically, for some reason, the cultural, really in depth, the social and cultural history of the 15th century just has always captivated me, and I don't know why. Maybe I am resurrected from that era. Who knows? But this specific kind of gown, this kirtle, it's a really practical gown. It really is. Even though it does have skirts to the ground, you can kilt your skirts up using this really practical belt when you're out and about, so the skirts aren't dragging on the ground. And then when you're in a nice clean place, you just let the skirts down and float about gracefully. Tiffy, thank you for joining my community. I look forward to seeing you again. Have a nice evening if you're still there. Oh, wow. So like a medieval historical social consultant. Yeah, Gwen, exactly. I am literally a professional at this point, historical medieval consultant for material culture, for event organization, for social history, for fashion history, for the making of clothing. Yeah, I am. Um, who are you trying to be? Please don't mean to be insulting, but I don't get it. That's fine. So I'm not trying to be an actual historical person. So I'm not a reenactor like that. I'm a living historian, which means I explore history firsthand by recreating the things they made using historical techniques, by researching through primary source documents to inform my understanding of the way people live their lives, and then recreating what I've read, what the archaeology tells us, what the art tells us. So for instance, I'm now repairing a pair of 15th century stockings, as we would call them modernly, hosen in 15th century English. And so basically, I am doing an interpretation, is what we say in the living history world, at least in America. I don't, living history interpreters, that's a term they use in the UK, right? So I'm like a living history interpreter. I'm interpreting history for myself, but also for other people, so that you can understand history in a more 3-dimensional or even 4-dimensional manner. So I'm depicting a noblewoman from the 1460s to 1480s in France, but not like I'm not Margaret of York or I'm not, Mary of Burgundy. I'm not actually being a specific person, but sort of myself in the 1460s to the 1480s. Does that make sense, Mike? And I'm not insulted at all. It's a great question. Appreciate it. You could call yourself an experimental archaeologist too. Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of experimental archaeology for better or for worse. Agree with you 100%, Wolverine. Yep. Thank you, Wolverine. I appreciate that great comment. Let me see. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Yeah, I'm definitely live. Oh my goodness. Oh, I've gotten behind again. Wasn't the Gothic period after the year 1 ACE? So, William, so that's a good question. So, the Gothic period, so Gothic kind of refers to art and architecture, and it really starts in the 12th century in France, is when Gothic really kind of gets its start. And it's a transition. It's not like in the year 1198 suddenly it's Gothic. There's a transition. There's a progression from the Romanesque style to the Gothic style. And Gothic, ironically, is a pejorative term because Gothic comes from Goth, the Goths, who by the Victorian standards were the ones who wrecked Rome and destroyed the Roman Empire and cast Europe into the Dark Ages. So calling art and architecture Gothic was actually meant to be insulting. But of course, from a art historian perspective, it can be at this point, it's just kind of a term that refers to the elongated, pointed arches and massive windows, right? Thin walls stretching to the sky, tall and elongated. That's kind of generally the Gothic aesthetic is the word I'm looking for. And in women, especially in the 15th century, this Gothic aesthetic really gets reflected by the tall headdresses that arrive and the gowns that are slimming in the body and then fuller in the skirts with the long trains. So you have this really elongated profile. Right. So that's what the term Gothic really refers to. And it's a relatively limited period. In art history, it's about 300 years, more or less, give or take a couple of decades. And it's not universal and it doesn't come everywhere, and Gothic is different in different parts of Europe. So it's not like this French Gothic is not the same as, say, Spanish Gothic or Asturian Gothic or even Galician Gothic, right? There's different interpretations of that Gothic aesthetic. But the reason that Gothic architecture comes about is actually, ironically, for the name being Gothic, is because there are great advances in architecture and architectural engineering that allow them to start building taller, thinner walls and putting massive tall windows into the walls rather than requiring big, thick slabs of stone and very small windows in order to maintain structural integrity. So there's a real irony there to the Victorian snobbery referring to it as Gothic art and Gothic architecture when it was massive advancements in engineering that allowed it to come about in the first place. Yeah, I just thought about that. That's interesting. So do I get this correct? Do you believe in unicorns? I do not believe in unicorns. I wish I did. It would be great if I could reasonably believe in unicorns. I definitely do not believe in unicorns. Not at all. Let me see. Yeah, Mike, I'm like literally catching up on people's questions. You're not the only one asking questions, by the way. Didn't the English differ from the French after they quit worshiping the Pope? Um, that's when you say differ, I mean, so if you're talking about cultural differences, the cultural differences, England's history is complicated because England, and Twitchy, which is going to agree with me on this, because England is basically a series of invasions for literally hundreds of years, almost nonstop. Um, and so, England's culture keeps changing to reflect the invading peoples. English is a product of those series, modern English is a product of those series of invasions. So, yeah, it's when did the English start to differ from the French? Well, they kind of always did because they were always a different group of people, and eventually certain certain kinds of French people, I the Norman French, invaded and then brought their culture with them, and then that influenced the English a lot. But the English really started trying to distinguish themselves from the French probably actively during the 15th centuries when that really started. That they really, and that's kind of the start of that movement to differentiate. And that's kind of the rise. That's when across Europe the states start coalescing into super states instead of individual small kingdoms, and you start seeing the rise of a regional or national identity, although not like we understand nationalism. And it's a slow process, and it doesn't happen overnight. And, in many cases in the 15th century, many English men and women also still have estates in France, in what is now modern day France. And their language, the language of the court in many cases for for a lot of the 15th century is still French. So, it's a gradual, not much of the 15th century, for the early parts of the 15th century is still French. So it's a gradual transition. And the Hundred Years' War, I think, really contributes to that movement to differentiate themselves from the French. Ironic, considering that part of the Hundred Years' War was the English king trying to be the king of France. It's complicated. Let me see. Yeah, exactly. So twitchy witch, yeah. Then there's fashion or culture, and then there's a sense of identity. So yeah, I mean, even in England, up until the 16th century, many of the cookbooks, the English so-called English cookbooks, are filled with French recipes. So the dances in 15th century England, many of them have French names, and are very clearly French in origin. A lot of the poetry and songs being sung in 15th century England, not only, but they're still French. So, a lot of the fashions are highly influenced by, well, Burgundian fashions, which is a species of French at this point. So, yeah, it's a complicated question. Could you give a brief reasoning for why 15th century appeals to you? So I enjoy, the 15th century food is delicious. The clothing in all parts of Europe just somehow fits my aesthetic because there's different silhouettes and different details in different parts of 15th century Europe, and I kind of like it all. And not just Europe, like 15th century Persia has really great clothes and food. Um, 15th century India has some really interesting things going on. 15th century China and 15th century Korea also have interesting things going on. So yeah, then we actually know enough about music and dance in the 15th century to reasonably recreate them and actually enjoy those dances. So there's a lot of upsides, I suppose, is what I'm saying, to exploring 15th century culture and history. Yeah. Let me see. Oh, cats will be cats. You're back. Good to see you again. Okay. Oh goodness. Um. Oh, Liam, thank you for saying. Yeah, very interesting. Okay. Sorry, I'm way behind on the chat comments. They've been coming so quickly. Um. Yeah, like I said, Twitchy, it's a very complex question. Gothics, yeah, William, unfortunately, I feel like the way history is taught in schools is just bad in general for any period of history, but medieval history, especially in America, is taught horribly and incorrectly and with all sorts of fallacies. A lot of school history teachers, like high school history teachers, middle school history teachers, actually know nothing about medieval history, and they're just going based on their textbooks, and the textbooks are garbage generally, sadly. Yeah. Definitely Gothic didn't start sharply in 1000 because the world didn't end. Oh, oh my gosh. What's your contribution to history? You know more than historians or ChatGPT. I am a historian, actually. So there's that. Let me see. Gosh, I'm so far behind on the chat. Sorry, everyone. The chat is moving really fast today. I'm not ignoring anyone on purpose, but it's almost impossible to keep up with it. Um, oh goodness. Question about the tapestry. That's a tapestry from the Windsor Dynasty, I'm guessing, as per the unicorn. It is not. This is a French tapestry that was woven, and I'm trying to remember the name of the noble family. You can't see yeah, you can see the crescents there. This is their heraldry. It was a French noble family account, I think, if I recall, and it was woven for a specific room in their castle. It's now in the Musée de Cluny. So yeah, the unicorn and the lion are very popular motifs for everyone in the 15th century, not just, it's definitely not just associated with England at all in the 15th century. Yeah. Let me see. Donoza, it was lovely to see you. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Oh goodness, I am so far behind. Oh God. Okay. Yeah. What's that backdrop? Looks awesome. This is a tapestry, The Lady and the Unicorn, La Dame à la Licorne, and this is the Sense of Hearing. Yep. It's an actual tapestry. So it's actually a pretty big one. 7 feet by 4 feet or something like that. Yeah, it's pretty big. Let me see. Don't stress, it's busy. It being busy is good, means people are unstressed and interactive. Impossible to keep up. Yeah, Gwen, it's been impossible to keep up. I haven't been ignoring anyone's questions unless they're rude and intentionally rude questions. Then I have ignored them. Absolutely. I don't need to acknowledge rude behavior. But real genuine questions, I haven't been ignoring them. The chat has just been moving literally so fast I can't keep up with it. Sorry. If one person asks a question, then I answer that question, and in the meanwhile, it moves. The chat moves onward. This is a 15th century tapestry. It dates to the 1490s, actually, and you can see the originals in the Musée de Cluny in Paris. They have their own special room where the light is kept low most of the time, but occasionally comes on a little brighter, so you can actually see the colors. But then it lowers again, so it doesn't damage the very delicate dye stuffs. Well, delicate. I mean, they're just old. These dye stuffs are old, and so we don't want to bleach them any more than they probably have already been. In fact, this tapestry and some of the other tapestries, we can tell they were stored at some point in a spot that got sunlight in very specific areas, because those areas of the red of the tapestry are faded, and all the reproductions, a lot of the proper reproductions actually reflect that fading, interestingly. So medieval people did not sexualize ankles. Believe it or not, ankles being a sexy thing was like invented in the 1920s. I think it wasn't even a Victorian thing. It wasn't an 18th century thing. It was not a medieval thing. Ankles were not especially sexy. Showing ankles for women was not a scandal or a big deal at all in the Middle Ages in any place or time, geography, or era that I've studied. Yeah. Sandra, welcome to my community. I am actually currently in Daegu, South Korea. I hail originally, though, I am a Delaware native, and you may never meet Delaware, United States. You may never meet someone from Delaware. They don't often get out of the state, and they don't often move about in the world. But there also aren't many of us. I think there are only 3 million of us total. So, yeah. So I'm originally from Delaware, but I emigrated to Germany. I immigrated to Germany when I was 22 and lived in Germany for a long time. And then I spent a lot of the last 11 years in and out of Korea. So where I'm from is actually, I guess, a complicated question, really, when it comes down to it. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. Should have paid better attention. I was trying to follow the chat. Oh, what a long way from home. Yeah, Delaware still does feel like home, but also kind of wherever I am also feels like home. So right now, Korea feels like home. I'm very comfortable moving out in the world, as it were. Yeah. Yeah, people were way less prudish in the Middle Ages compared to the 19th century. 100%. I recently got a comment under, I don't remember which of the videos, but it was, I think it was actually maybe one of my getting dressed videos, and they talked about, oh, it was my dance video. I published a video practicing a 15th century dance with my condottiero, and I rightfully titled it "Practicing a Slow, Sexy Medieval Dance" because by medieval standards, it was considered sexy. And the person commented, it was a genuine comment, that their understanding of medieval history was that people were prudish, and that, no one exposed necklines, and that, people were very puritanical. And it's like, literally, the word puritanical is invented because of the Puritans who were puritanical versus the people, the kind of social mores and interactions that came before them. So yeah. um Let me see. Hold on a minute. Um, Let me see. My gosh, goodness gracious, getting back here. What brought me to South Korea? What brought me to South Korea? Originally, the U.S. military, and then I just really like it here. I love life in South Korea. It's pretty great, for me anyway. Catching up. Wait. There was another question. Oh, watch. Oh, yeah. Just watched your short on medieval hair washing. Did people actually wash and use urine? Um, no. So in the Middle Ages, they used urine for laundry. Um, so they used it to wash their clothes. But it's ancient Rome where they used urine as a mouthwash to bleach their teeth. Yes, folks, you heard me correctly. In ancient Rome, the Romans actually used fermented urine, which becomes mostly ammonia at that point. They used fermented urine, i.e., ammonia, as a bleaching mouthwash. But that was the ancient Romans. I have not found evidence of that in medieval Europe. If you have for medieval Europe, let me know. But no, they didn't use urine to wash their hair. They used it to wash their clothes in medieval Europe, and a variety of other applications. Fermented urine, which is ammonia, is basically the medieval multi-purpose cleaning chemical of choice because it dissolves grease and therefore helps remove stains, and also it is an actual natural bleach, especially in combination with sunlight. So it was used for a wide variety of applications. Also, it can be used as a mordant to help mordant dyes to, say, leather and also certain fabrics. So yeah, fermented urine is used a lot in medieval Europe, but it was not used for personal hygiene. It was used for personal hygiene in medieval Rome. Okay. Okay, so yeah. So that is, yeah. But I think, if you think about the chemicals that are in a lot of our cleaning agents now, they're not any better than fermented urine and might in fact be worse. So, in terms of the health impacts. And in fact, a lot of the chemicals in, say, our toothpaste and shampoos and, um, other items we use in our personal hygiene aren't really better than fermented urine, and again, probably have a worse health impact than fermented urine would. So even though fermented urine certainly comes with a very, very noticeable smell, that smell actually evaporates. So if you use, some people ask me this, fermented urine, if you use fermented urine to bleach your clothes, do laundry, won't it smell like urine afterwards? No. As it dries, I think it sublimates. But in any case, it definitely evaporates. The smell goes away. And that's also why they would frequently add, one of the reasons they would add lavender, which is why it's called lavender, by the way, to the laundry. During the laundering process, they would rinse with lavender water because it would also help make it smell sweet. Let's see. In the Deep South, chicken shit tea was given to children as a cure. Yeah, I've heard that. My stepfather is from Winston-Salem. His family didn't do that, but I have heard that before. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, the reality is that a lot of things we now consider waste products weren't waste products in the Middle Ages. They were they came out the other end pre-processed and ready to be used into something else. Horse manure was used to build ovens and in wattle and daub homes, because horse manure is basically highly processed grass, which which actually helps the clay mixture, the clay and sand mixture that you use to actually plaster historical homes, like half timber homes. The grass in the horse manure helps it actually adhere together and be flexible and not crack and break and fall apart. So, I was thinking, I had this thought yesterday or the day before, that what we consider waste products were just considered products in the Middle Ages, ready, processed, and ready to go to be turned into something else. So, yeah, that's another way in which I think we could probably learn from historical, construction practices, even historical construction materials. How can we have vast amounts of cow manure in the US, especially, and probably in Argentina as well. We should put it to use, right? How can we put that to use instead of just letting it sort of fester in the ground and actually pollute the ground with too much of the chemicals that it contains? Let me see. Did you get out of the parallel world? It looks old but very beautiful. Well, thank you. Come over, Chris. What are your hobbies? Goodness, I have a lot of hobbies. I am one of these people who is fascinated by so many things. Lots of handcrafts. I'm very fascinated by all manner of handcrafts. I'm fascinated and pursue all manner of dance, historical, traditional, and even modern in some cases. I love to travel. In fact, for those who want to follow me on my travel adventures, I have a Travels with the Contessa channel, with the Creative Contessa channel. You can see my travel adventures and go along with me on my adventures across the world. I love languages. I love learning languages. So I guess it was a profession. I was a professional translator, but since I don't make money at it anymore, I guess it's now a hobby. Yeah, I have lots of interests, lots of interests. Most of them are either dance related or handcraft related. Oh, horseback riding also. That's definitely a hobby. I definitely do not do that professionally anymore. I used to. I don't anymore. Let me see. Wattle and daub construction is the longest lasting method besides stone. Yeah, wattle and daub is very efficient. The only problem with the daub is that it does need to be replaced I mean, frequently. I mean, every like 100 years or so, depending on how it was made. It does need to be replaced. It isn't a forever technique. But the wattle lasts for bloody well ever. And the timber framing, as long as you don't get, what are those insects that eat wood? Termites. As long as you don't get termites, then you're good to go. But the daub does need to be replaced probably once every 100 years, touched up at least. Still very long lasting. Agree 100%. Well, the problem with cow manure as fertilizer is that depending on what the cows eat, it might actually kill your plants. And there's just in some cases too much of it, right? But yeah, I mean, reusing it as fertilizer is another great use for it. Yeah, it is. Yeah, Twitchy says it's already. Yep, yep. Thank Twitchy. You said it all. I need to make sure I get to the front. I've decided to subscribe. Oh, well, thank you, Richard. Really appreciate that. Yeah, if you're enjoying this, guys, please consider liking, follow, or definitely hit the like button. Also consider subscribing. And if you're interested in extras and if you're interested in supporting my work more directly, I do have a patron and I thank my patrons, and I do have channel membership on YouTube. And I thank my channel members who are out there. I'm not certain if Takeda is there or not. Twitchy is there. Laurie is there. I'm not certain if I missed Daddy on a Caddy. He's a regular supporter through the super chat. I really appreciate you all going that extra mile and supporting me. It's really fantastic. And I offer extras for my channel members and my patrons. I have a Discord specifically for my patrons and channel members. We chat and share information there on a regular basis. I have exclusive members and patrons only videos and content. I share my research there with my patrons and channel members, resources that I find. So yeah, if you're interested in and able to support me in a more financial fashion, Patreon or channel membership are your options. Otherwise, I do appreciate you all just being part of the community, participating in this lively live chat discussion with each other and with me. and just generally being part of my creative learning and sharing journey. Oh, goodness. The chat is moving so quickly. Um, oh yeah, Twitchy. I can help you out with the Lens Connect stuff. I I used to live in Germany. I lived in a Lens Connect rich environment. I'll just put it that way. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, Landsknecht is not uniform either. Like the so-called Landsknecht period is kind of end of the 15th century to the third quarter of the 16th century, more or less. So, you might want to get them if they haven't already. Oh, you did tell me. You did tell me sort of end of 15th to 1530s. Yeah, yeah, okay. You might want to specify it down a little more than that, though, because that fashion moves pretty quickly. Oh, Molly, I really appreciate you. Oh, you're really sweet. Let me see. Oh yeah, thatched roofing. Yeah, it's a great material, and I love thatched roofing because it is highly sustainable and highly renewable, and sequesters carbon and all the good stuff. But yeah, it does. You do have to replace it. I don't know what. Actually, I don't know. Thatched roofing. What is the turnaround on thatched roofing? Now that I think about it, it might be longer than your average. God knows the kind of roofs they put on houses in the U.S. You look beat, get some sleep. Wow, thank you. No, where I am, it's actually in the morning. I just genetically have bags under my eyes. It's just how I look. Yeah, a genetic gift. That's all. It's just how I look. I just need to nail the client to a wall so I can get a date to use. Yeah, seriously. I personally prefer the early Lance Connect period. I really like the sleeker look of the end of the 15th century, early 16th century to like the giant, overdone, bulky, super everything of the later Lance Connect period. Yeah, that's just my personal aesthetic. Everyone has their own thing. Nada Jeff, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Yeah, again, the chat is moving really fast. So if I miss you all saying something, I'm not missing it on purpose. It's just that it's moving faster than I can keep up with it. Thatch mixed with modern materials makes for a dang good roof. I bet it would. Question. Okay, well, that's definitely. You can stretch a thatched roof out to about 40, but it's not very good for the wooden frame. Oh, yeah, it's gonna dampen growth will happen. Yeah, that's a good point, Twitchy. Yeah, they have thatched roofs in Korea too. That's the distinguishing feature in historical Korean architecture between a nobleman's home and a non-nobleman's home. So nobleman's home, the word in Korean for that actually translates to tile roof, and the word for a peasant's home translates to thatched roof. So the thatching was used on the peasants' homes and on the servants' quarters, and then the noblemen had the expensive tile roofed homes. So some of the historic homes, the point of that is the historic homes here in Korea, the Hanok as they're now called, they they still have them, and a lot of the historic buildings still, and so they actually have thatched roofs, and so they do need rethatching. So that is a skill that is actually still somewhat alive here in Korea, although they're having issues finding young people to take that over because the younger Koreans all want sexy careers as doctors, apparently, and or in a company, and they don't want that kind of work. So they're having some issues with those historical crafts kind of being taken over. Yeah. Yeah. Thank goodness for my condottiero coming out and answering the questions that I missed while I'm answering another question. Um, Let me see. Oh, yeah. So if you want a tapestry like this, I'll repeat it. I have a video on my YouTube channel. If you look up tapestry under the full length videos, I have a video about these tapestries and about how to buy them, where to buy them, and what to look for when you buy them, and how to get a good deal on them. So if you're interested in buying a tapestry like this, check out that video. We got most of these on eBay, some of them on Etsy, but they're all either dead stock or used. And they're at least 40 years old, which means they're made of linen and wool and silk, not like the modern ones, which are all made out of like nylon and polyester. Yeah. Yeah, Japan occupied, well, Japan invaded Korea outright in the Indian War at the end of the 16th century. The occupation in the end of the 19th century and of the 20th century was not so much an invasion, it was colonization, because it was not, there was no war was fought. It was heartbreaking on many levels. It was it, Korea actually turned to the United States, by the way, to help get support against Japan, and the US turned them down. They tried to get support from Russia, but Russia lost the Sino-Russian War, which meant that protection from Russia as of 1905 became effectively useless. And that's the time at which the Japanese basically colonized Korea. Yeah, pretty rough. Good linen things are hard to find in America. It's hard to find good linen, let alone good linen things. The reality is that the linen that's woven these days is mostly super cheap and not made to last. Good linen you can still get. They're still making it in Belgium and France. That's where the really actually good quality linen is. It is not cheap though. If it's like any less than $40 a yard, it's probably not good quality linen, unless it's on like super sale or something. And the difference between a high quality linen and the garbage linen that most people have touched or felt these days, world of difference. I have a linen polisher, a linen smoother. Many of you have made cheeky comments about it because of how it looks, and I can't blame you. But that linen smoother, I have used it on some of the linen things I have, but I don't have, I'll be honest, a lot of the linen I have is not actually the best quality. A lot of it I bought in my less affluent days, so it's not it's cheap. And the linen smoother, it will polish the linen, but the linen actually unpolishes itself in the humidity because it fluffs back out again. Quality linen will not do that. You can polish quality linen and get a sheen on it, like a proper sheen. So yeah, that's one of the ways you can tell if the linen is quality, if it actually takes a polish from being polished with a polishing glass or even polished with a really hot and very heavy iron. Gelbeline, thank you for that lovely compliment. Yeah, I actually generally end up wearing this daily because of my live streams. And I can tell you that it's actually very comfortable and very practical for daily wear. Because if I go out and about, even though it's very long, I can actually just hike the skirts up in my belt. Oh, hi, Chini. What is it, baby? You want into my lap? What do you want, Chini? Did you eat all the food? Is that what this is about? You all can't see. Oh, sorry, baby. I just elbowed him in the face. He's got a hard head. It's okay. Yeah. Let me see. K-dramas are generally, yeah, the K-dramas are generally, the quality of the acting is pretty good. The clothing in the K-dramas, not so great. It's okay, but it's not great. Clothing in K-dramas is nearly always what I call costume late Joseon. So not particularly accurate. Yeah. Um, yeah, Mr. Toad, you might have to, did I miss a comment? Let me see. Is this channel like a mini history channel? John Guy, it's a living history channel for certain. It's definitely a living history channel. So I'm a living historian, which means I explore the past through experimental archaeology, by recreating the material culture of the past, by exploring some of the social culture of the past, by recreating the food and the music and the dance. So it's what's called living history. and I am a living historian. And part of living history, though, is also understanding, the chronicles, the actual timeline of history too. So, it's more than just knowing. It's about a full understanding of history, not just an understanding about the dates and the battles. It's also understanding the philosophy of the era. It's understanding the causes and the effects of the era, the evolution, the changes. Yeah, so that's I this is a medieval sewing party basically where I and other people, if they wish, sew something and we chat and people ask me questions. And if I'm focusing on any particular piece of research and I have new information to share, then I talk about it here in the live chat. I haven't had much time for any research lately, for much research. So I don't have people have just been asking me questions, which have been triggering sort of mini lectures throughout the whole session. Yeah. Okay. My kitty familiar is hooked to my hip too. She's sitting right beside me on the couch as I listen to this live. Yeah, my kitty. My I call him my feline overlord number two. He wants me to feed him. I think is actually what's happening. Yeah, he wants. I think they ate all the food and he would like more. Please, please, ma'am, may I have some more? Yeah. How the people actually lived is something I find far more interesting than the days of battles. Mitya, yeah, absolutely 100%. And I feel like there is too much focus on big man history and dates, and not nearly enough emphasis on the why, on cause and effect, because cause and effect is what will actually teach us lessons that we can apply to the modern world and hopefully not bloody well repeat history. Just saying. Yeah, no. I find the social history eminently more interesting than battles and treaties and even religious history from a macro perspective. Religious history from a micro perspective as it affects you on the social level. That is really interesting. I mean, not that I'm going to ignore the dates of battles. Those also have an impact on social life, right? Because some of those battles cause a seismic shift in society. So I'm not saying we should ignore those. But I think if history were more often taught like a story, like the story that it is, and that it was presented as a fully fleshed out story, talking about the clothes and the food and the way people live their daily lives, I think children, students would be much more interested in it and would be more likely to remember the lessons. Yep. That's my take on it. In your opinion, what's the best K-drama from a costume perspective? I don't know. That's really hard. Honestly, I haven't no thus far anyway. I haven't seen any period K-drama that made me go, "Oh yeah, wow, look, they actually did that accurately." None. So none. They're all kind of fantasy. They're all fantasy hanbok, fantasy historical hanbok rather than accurate. And that's because it's probably it's harder and more expensive actually to make the silhouettes of historical hanbok than it is make to make the modern ones or the pseudo modern ones. And also, a lot of the especially the if a K drama is set in the 16th century, or the 15th century, 15th century and 16th century Korean women's clothing is not fitted at all. It's big, it's voluminous, it's massive. It might actually be slightly inconvenient to film actresses in those garments if they're court garments. But also they're not sexy by modern, not even a little bit by modern standards, because they're A-frame. It's like from your shoulders to the ground is like basically one line more or less. So I think that they're also trying to cater to modern sensibilities of what counts as attractive in that regard. Same thing for the men. I mean, they dress the men often in garments that have waist level belts and whatnot, whereas especially in later Joseon, even the men, the waist and quotes under the garment is a belt under their armpits, which just kind of creates this big, voluminous, massive fabric. Again, not very appealing to modern sensibilities. Yeah. And yeah, I know bloody is derogatory in England, and I use that word intentionally. What am I making? I am actually working on a pair of 15th century hosen, women's hosen. And what I'm doing is actually repairing them because I wear these like real clothes at many events and I dance my way through the soles. So I'm actually attaching a replacement sole on the bottom because otherwise, this is what my stockings look like after just 2 weeks of medieval living history events. I wear right through the bottoms. So I am putting on a replacement sole on most of them of what's called fustian, which is a linen cotton blend. And it's, a heavy, this is a heavy fustian. It's much, 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 much thicker actually than the original linen. So that should actually allow the sole, I'm hoping anyway, to last much longer. That's the hope, and I'm sticking to it. We'll see if that comes to pass or not. Gilbally and I will hopefully meet the local SCA folks soon. I'm excited to learn and make friends. Well, uh, Gilbaline, I hope you do as well. Have you already found your local group? Have you found out when their meetings are and that sort of thing? Yeah, in the SCA, I'm known as Judith de Northumbria, where I am a countess and a master of the Order of the Laurel for people who are part of that organization. That and $20 will get you a coffee at Starbucks. Let me see. I'm not sure if this is correct, but to the best of my knowledge, medieval cuisines were made from bits of animals, such as rat bits, worms, snails, and other unsavory insects. Is that true? Richard, that is definitely not true at all. Medieval cuisine is amazingly refined and sophisticated and delicious. Definitely no insects in Europe. Insects are still eaten to this day in many parts of Asia, by the way. But no, European cuisine is very refined. Even the peasants had access to really quality foodstuffs. So, uh, a lot of the ingredients, the base ingredients were similar. The things that are different is that medieval cuisine was much spicier. It was much closer to Persian and Indian cuisine, modern Persian and Indian cuisine in terms of its spicing. Lots of exotic spices like cloves and nutmeg and grains of paradise and galangal and ginger and cinnamon and um, long pepper, right? And lots of combinations of sweet and savory and sour, complex sauces, lots of roasted meats, lots of root vegetables. So yeah, no, medieval cuisine, definitely none of that. Medieval cookbooks, they talk about sophisticated processes for plating up and making beautiful dishes. How to use natural dye stuffs to dye different dishes, different colors to make them beautiful, how to build castles out of gingerbread, which medieval gingerbread is nothing like modern gingerbread. It's basically kind of like medieval food Play-Doh made of breadcrumbs and honey, tempered honey, no less. So even more like medieval Play-Doh, medieval edible Play-Doh. So yeah, no, medieval cuisine is very, very sophisticated and highly varied. There's lots of different kinds of pies, meat pies, egg pies, cheese pies, some really crazy exotic recipes. There's this recipe from Italy called torta parmigiana, which as far as I can tell is a super pie made of four different kinds of ravioli with with four different kinds of filling, layered in with meat and cheese and egg, and that's all put together and then baked, and a crust is put on top, and that's baked, and then you slice into it. I mean, yeah, and each of the ravioli are dyed to be different colors so that it's visually stunning. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not certain where you heard that, Richard Copeland, about medieval food, but definitely not. No, neither the archaeological nor the visual nor the actual cookbook evidence points to that. Yeah, Scotland made Irish beef stew from real Irish. Do you think they had beef stew in medieval times? Yeah, they had lots of different kinds of beef stew. Um, and but again, the stews would have been more interesting in terms of flavor profile than a modern beef stew would be. It would be sweet and sour and savory. And some beef stews have things like prunes and currants or raisins added to them and dates. And they wouldn't have had as many vegetables. There weren't, at least in the recipes, there's a difference between pottages eaten by the peasants, which would have actually been more nutritionally dense than the food eaten by the nobility, interestingly. The stews that we find in the noble cookbooks the cookbooks of the nobility tend to actually be, like they might be onions and beef, but they don't actually have lots of vegetables added to them. Otherwise, they have a rich broth that goes along with it. Whereas we do know that the peasants ate pottages, which is another word for stew, basically made of whatever was in season, focusing really heavily on herbs and root vegetables and other kinds of vegetables, not just root vegetables, vegetables in general, eaten with bread. The peasants didn't have access to as much meat as the nobility did. Not that they didn't have access to meat, just not as much. God knows, no one had access to as much meat as the nobility did. Jesus Christ, the shopping bills, the shopping bills from the ducal and noble households are pretty alarming with the amount of meat that they had in their meals, which is why gout was the disease of the wealthy. Let me see. Let me see. Oh, hygiene. Yeah, thank you, Micha, for addressing that hygiene question. Yeah, so modern people seem to think that if you can't take a bath or a shower, then you must be a dirty person. And I'm not, Joseph, I'm not saying you said this, but a lot of people do think this. If you can't bathe in a bathtub or you can't run a shower over your body, then you must have been dirty. Absolutely not. You can absolutely sponge bathe yourself from just a little basin of water, a cloth, and just washing your body that way. No bathtub needed. You can be very clean. Medieval people were extremely fastidious. They found cleanliness extremely important. There are numerous manuscripts that have recipes for different kinds of washes, for different kinds of solutions to clean your body and your hair, different treatments for body odor issues. There was a whole ritual around hand washing at the table, and hand washing was done regularly. Manuals on table etiquette talk about the necessity of washing your hands and washing your hands between different courses and different kinds of food so that you don't cross contaminate. So this idea of the Middle Ages as a time of dirty people it's wrong. It's just wrong. People were way dirtier during the Industrial Revolution by a mile than they were during the Middle Ages. Middle Ages, and lots of recipes or receipts for removing stains, for laundry detergents, as they would have understood them. Not necessarily that we would understand laundry detergent, for cleaning your garments, for keeping your garments clean. Yeah, medieval people very focused on hygiene for certain. Very important part of the culture. It's just not necessarily hygiene the way we understand it, but they were achieved the way we would understand it, but they were still clean nevertheless. I just spent 2 weeks basically following a 15th century hygiene regimen, mostly except for the tooth, except for tooth care, and I'll explain that in a moment. And every day I I took a sponge bath before going to bed with a basin and a sponge and some water, and that's all it took. And so I went to bed clean every single night. Now, I did not follow medieval tooth hygiene because their tooth cleansers would literally remove the enamel from your teeth. So yeah, you wouldn't get cavities from the food, but you would get cavities because you remove the enamel, which exposes your teeth to bacterial growth. So no, I did not use medieval tooth hygiene techniques. No, nope, nope, nope. They also use sugar. Medieval people who could afford it also used sugar as a tooth cleanser. So yeah. But there are also bathhouses. People forget that uh, before the Reformation, there were bathhouses across Europe, north and south, east and west. And they were called stews, often in 15th century English. And yes, sometimes there was extracurricular activity happening in those bathhouses, but not always. And women use the bathhouses too. So there were ways to actually bathe your body properly in a bathtub with water in it, also. Not every day. Obviously, people didn't have time to go to a bathhouse every day, or even necessarily could afford to go to a bathhouse every day. But they were there and people did use them. And there are ways to bathe yourself without having a bathtub. In fact, if you want to watch, a couple of weeks ago, I did a live stream that demonstrated the process of medieval hair washing for women. No bathtub, no shower, clothes on, in fact. And so you can actually watch me describing the process. You can watch me washing my hair while describing what's happening. So you can get an idea for what I mean when I say you don't need a shower. You really don't. You don't need a shower. You don't need a bathtub. You can keep clean, perfectly clean without it, which people have been doing for literally centuries. Yeah, this modern idea that you have to submerge your body in a giant wasteful tub of water is very interesting. Or that you need, at least a half-hour shower, again, of wasted water to achieve cleanliness. Not true. Not true. Okay. Our ancestors understood clove was great for oral hygiene. Yep, some ancestors did. Some peoples definitely understood that cloves were great for oral hygiene. Also, a good topical analgesic clove oil is. So yeah, but others then decided that sugar was good for oral hygiene, which it is not. Let me see. Um, who thought it was unholy to touch water? Let me see. Mm, oh, I hate this thing. If I touch the comment, then it goes away. Okay, sorry, I'm going to hide it in a moment. Maybe, or maybe not. Hide message. Cancel. Hide message. Good. Okay. In medieval England, the water was not clean enough to drink, so people, including children, had to drink beer throughout their lifetime. This happened in France. So this was true in various parts of Europe, but not in all parts. So depending on where you were in England and in France, you might actually have access to a clean source of water and therefore drink water. But that was very regional. But the kind of beer they were drinking was not beer like we would buy in a store, modern store now. Their beer was small beer. The drinking beer was small beer. It was the second brewing, and it was like 1% alcohol at most. It was like kombucha, basically, in terms of alcohol content. So it's not like you had alcoholic 5-year-olds with swollen, scarred livers. Um, but they did also have other things they could drink. The medieval home companion in England as well. The medieval home companion actually I talked about this earlier, actually mentions herbal tea concoctions you can make to serve as beverages. And part of the concocting process is boiling water. So medieval people understood that there was something magical about boiling water, that it improved the outcomes drastically if you boiled the water and boiled food in it, boiled implements in it, boiled your broth, boiled the water for your herbal tea, your tisane, right? So they understood that there were way better outcomes if you boiled your water than if you didn't. They didn't necessarily understand the microbial aspect of it, but they knew about cause and effect. And so in making these tisanes with boiled water, they were in essence purifying, not purifying, they were sterilizing the water. So they weren't just children, not all children were drinking beer either, not even in England. That's another of those myths. God, I really need to do another medieval myth busting, don't I? That's another of those myths, unfortunately. And wine was not drunk straight up either. It was diluted at least 1-to-1, but really temperate individuals such as Philip the Good, the Duke of Burgundy, he drank his wine diluted 4-to-1. So 4 parts water, 1 part wine. But that being said, it is true that depending on where you were in Europe, most people were likely to drink either small beer or diluted wine as their beverage of choice, including children, at least for the small beer. But it's not the same as drinking your 9% by volume Danish super beer, right? Yeah, some of the people commenting on here are strange. Yeah. Like how Romans knew lead was poisonous, but used it because it was cheap and easy and it usually developed a non toxic layer too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they might not have understood why, but they understood that it was. Yep, precisely. Yeah, people just weren't dirty the way people imagine. Bathing was not outlawed. It was not considered sinful. Water was not considered dangerous as such. Yeah. 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 Well, there's all kinds of weird myths floating around about medieval people. That medieval people had no teeth. That's not true. You can tell the difference between a medieval European skeleton and a Renaissance one. Renaissance, if we're talking 16th century. You can exactly see when sugar gets introduced in Europe in mass because of the sugar plantations that the Portuguese set up in the Azores, right? And in Madeira, because then that's called white gold. When the white gold starts getting imported into Europe heavily at the end of the 15th century for cheaper, way cheaper than, because before that it was had to come from Indonesia. It was a luxury good. Right? So when it starts getting imported in mass and it gets cheap and people start consuming sugar heavily in the 16th century, that's when teeth start rotting out. You can tell the difference. That's how you can tell the difference between one of the big differences between a medieval skeleton and an early modern or even modern skeleton, because the teeth are just in terrible condition in the modern skeleton, whereas in the medieval skeleton, they're actually in okay shape. They might be missing some enamel, they might be ground down for various reasons because of the kinds of foods they ate on a regular basis, but not because of sugar consumption and rotting teeth. Let me see. They got it right with the copper cups. Copper is an essential mineral and kills the pathogens and bacteria in liquid. Oh gosh, more questions about Amish. Yeah. I am currently dressed as a 15th century uh, Burgundian noblewoman, or French, as you would understand that concept in the modern world. Yeah, not Amish. You can tell I'm not Amish for many reasons. One, this decadent necklace, this decadent collar. Two, the very relatively low neckline of my dress. Yeah, not Amish. Way too, way not Amish, and way not Mennonite. I mean, you're absolutely right. The vast majority weren't part of the aristocracy. I seem to have missed a comment. But the even peasants had access to bathing, to the ability to have a bucket of water, a basin of water and a cloth, and to wash themselves. Cholera is actually a later development. I actually have not heard of any cholera outbreaks in medieval Europe, I don't think. Cholera is a later development with the severe urbanization of the cities, and when specifically, I think the biggest cholera outbreak in London had to do with the yeah, the well being right next to a cemetery, right? Something like that. Do you like the era, or do you cosplay it? Do you actually live like this in day to day life? I think it's unique. I'm just curious. I am what's called a living historian. So I explore history by, understanding it more viscerally, more firsthand, by recreating various aspects of in this case, 15th century material culture, 15th century social culture. Making the food, recreating the dances, recreating the music, playing the games, making the clothes, doing the historical handcrafts. Right, that's what's called living history. Not certain about cosplay parts so much. Uh, yeah, I'm not. It's funny because medieval people cosplayed, ancient Romans cosplayed, by the way. So I guess I do historical cosplay from that perspective. A 15th century person cosplaying a ancient Greek goddess or something like that. Yeah, I've done that. I don't live like this on a daily basis in the sense of I live in a modern home. I live with modern conveniences. I have electricity. I have a modern kitchen. I do actually do encampments where I go and live, 15th century style for a week or 2 weeks at a time. I do sometimes dress this way, but generally only when I've done a live stream and I'm just not changing clothes again afterwards for the rest of the day. Yeah, so I do like the era. I'm interested in the era. I'm interested in how people lived in the past and exploring and uncovering that. So that's kind of what my channel is all about, is exploring but you know, in terms of recreating, I'm only going to recreate the beautiful side of history. I'm not going to explore disease and misogyny and injustice in any kind of real way. I'll read about it to understand it, but those aren't the aspects of historical culture that I'd like to bring back to life or experience firsthand, even. Oh, Micha, did I miss? Yeah. So everyone, I'm not. Do you live in? Yeah. Okay. Wesley, I'm sorry if I missed a question. The chat is moving pretty quickly, so by the time I finish answering a question, there's like 50 other comments. So I apologize. I wasn't ignoring you at all. And also, this interface is not easy to work with. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, corsets. Yeah, corsets are a much later thing. So the first thing that you could identify visually as a corset actually seems to crop up as a scoliosis corrector in like the 1530s. There's this scary looking iron bodice, cage bodice, that was specifically designed to fix a child's scoliosis. It is not meant as a fashion garment. The first fashion garment pair of bodies, those crop up at the end of the sort of second half of the 16th century. And those don't do the kind, they're not like what most people imagine a modern corset to be. But yeah, no, this is not the period of corsets at all. 15th century, no corsets. No. I'm sleeping in a tent and work as a waiter. I cosplay homelessness, high class and profound confusion of the 20th century. I'm really sorry to hear that, Leo. Okay. What do you know about the color purple? Was it very important back then? Okay, so when people talk about royal purple, they're talking about Tyrian purple generally. And Tyrian purple is made from murex. It's a little shellfish. And it took 10,000 of these little shellfish. They look kind of like mini conches, basically mini conches, right? They've got that swirly kind of shell. It would take 10,000 murex to make like about this much purple dye stuff. And Tyrian purple is not just purple, it's this amazing violet red color. So it's deeper and more interesting than what we might imagine when you say purple now. That was a color that in the Byzantine Empire and in ancient Roman Empire, and then the Eastern Roman Empire, as would become, was restricted to a very specific class of people. And I don't mean the aristocrats; I mean like the royal family. Now, I'm not 100% familiar with the sumptuary laws of the Eastern Roman Empire, but it was extremely restricted. But it was kind of also self-restricting because it was crazy expensive. And the only place Tyrian purple was made in Europe was in Constantinople. And the Tyrian purple workshops stopped producing in 1204 when the Venetians when the Franks, the Western European Crusaders, sacked Constantinople and took it over. And for a while, you had the Latin Empire of Constantinople instead of the Greek-speaking one, as they referred to it. So yeah, basically the Tyrian purple stopped being produced as of 1204. Those workshops were never repopulated. And the reasons for them never having been repopulated aren't quite well understood as far as I know, but it seems to be something have to do with the fact that, well, frankly, the Eastern Roman Empire was on the decline anyway, is what it seems to come down to a certain extent. But the color purple can also be obtained with other dye stuffs, like a red base dye with an overdye of blue. So whether it was special or not would really depend on which of the dye stuffs were used, because different dye stuffs had were different levels of expensive, right? Kermes, which is a louse, an insect basically, Kermes red, from which the word crimson comes, kermes, crimson, from which the word crimson comes, was the most expensive red, hands down. So if your purple color was made with Kermes base and a woad over dye, then that purple would be expensive. So it's not a question of purple itself being special or expensive, but specific kinds of purple being potentially special and or expensive. Thank you for that great question, Wesley. Yeah. In Ireland, it wasn't necessarily Tyrian purple, although it's possible that Tyrian purple garments may have been imported from the Eastern Roman Empire in the first millennium. But in Ireland, it's ochiol. It's a word I've never heard pronounced aloud. It's a lichen. It's the kind of lichen that grows in Ireland, and it produces a really lovely purple. And in first millennium Ireland, that shade of purple was restricted to the kings of Ireland. And I think certain members of the king's court, depending on the kingdom you were in, because Ireland was not a monolith in the first millennium. So yeah, whether the purple was restricted or not, again, it depends on specifically when and where you're talking about and what was used to create that shade of purple. This has been your mini TED Talk on medieval dye stuffs. Let me see. Oh, well, appreciate you. Thank you for that compliment. What did I pay for my time machine? I don't know, 10,000 hours of investing into this. The invasion of Constantinople by 75,000 Scandinavian ships? That sounds like a pretty implausible number. I'm not certain there were 75,000 ships in Scandinavia in any given era. To what are you specifically referring? I mean, the Norse the Norse traders definitely did make their way down to Constantinople. So that is a thing. Okay. Yep, gone. Okay. Did they crush bugs for dyes? Yes, Kermes, I think, is the only insect they use for dye stuffs. But it's the louse. You can't use it just any stage of its development. Unfortunately, for Kermes, for the dye stuff, you have to get the females when they're pregnant with their eggs before they lay their eggs. So unfortunately, or it might be right after the eggs have been laid. It might be the freshly laid eggs. One or the other. The problem is that the Kermes that you use for dye stuffs interrupts the reproductive cycle of the Kermes, which is why they were, used almost to extinction. So yeah, they would actually crush. They would dry them and then they would crush them, and then they would make a dye liqueur from it, which is not like a spirit liqueur. It's making basically a kind of dense broth of the dye stuff, and then that would make the dye bath. Okay, and gone. That lichen, Michael, that lichen to which I was referring, I think, I don't know if it's specific to Ireland, as in it grows nowhere else. I know it grows in Ireland for certain. I couldn't tell you. It might grow, for all I know, it also grows in Iceland, or maybe it grows in other places. But yeah, so um, you know, it does make this amazing purple dye. Let me see. Yeah, I'm not certain. Ryan, are you not getting are you not moderating anymore? Unfortunately, I can't keep up with the chat to actually moderate at the same time as talking to you all and sewing. I'm sorry. I apologize for all the mean people. We're trying to block them as quickly as we can. Unfortunately, I made them normally, I forgot when I set up this live stream, I needed to go in and change the comment settings to subscribers only over a certain amount of time, and that usually keeps the mean people literally from being able to comment. But I didn't do that this time. I apologize, everyone. That's on me. That's my fault. Yeah, so the natural, so okay, Kermes is the historic medieval dye. Cochineal is the New World equivalent, and cochineal is actually used as a food dye stuff. It's actually natural and it's perfectly harmless and is way better than a lot of the garbage chemical dye stuffs they put in food. I forget, cochineal is like red 24 or something like that if you look on the ingredients. Yeah, Ryan has a difficult task. I know. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, red cochineal, which is from Mexico. Cochineal is actually also a louse. It is a relative of the Kermes louse, and it is used. I think it's still used as a actually a natural food dye stuff. Yeah, people say mean stuff. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Twitchy Witch. It's okay. It's cool. Right. The female with the unhatched eggs produces the brightest red. Thank you, Twitchy. That was it. Right. Which which unfortunately means that you're killing not just an egg-laying female louse, you're also killing her offspring. So it's very disruptive to the life cycle and the special survival of the Kermes louse. And I don't know if it's the same for the cochineal, but I'm going to bet it is. If you want the best red, yeah. Yeah, ochre was highly sought after for its dark red. Ochre is not used as a fabric dye stuff. Ochre is used as a pigment in paint. But I've never read any use, at least not in medieval dyeing. I haven't read about ochre being used to dye fabric. Yeah. Oh, thank you. This is a tapestry. And it is an actual tapestry. It's a replica of the Lady and the Unicorn. It is the sense of hearing. That's why she's playing a portative organ. Yeah, so it's an actual cloth tapestry. So it's woven out of linen and wool. And in this case, it is a tapestry weave, but the pattern has actually been painted on, not by me. It's been screened on by hand, by artisans working 60 years ago, I think. Ah, the necklace. This is the Maria Portinari collar. It is a replica of one owned by said Maria Portinari, who married. Her name was originally Maria Baroncelli. That was her maiden name, and she married Tommaso Portinari, who was an employee of the Medici. He was seconded to Bruges, actually to the Burgundian court, and she married Tommaso, and she was depicted in both her engagement portrait and a later portrait, a later altarpiece that's in the Uffizi, as a married woman wearing this beautiful collar. And there's actually some thoughts that this may have been a gift from Margaret of York to Maria, because Tommaso was actually one of Charles, Duke of Burgundy's household members. He was actually one of his valets, one of his men, as it were, an intimate of him, actually. And we think Maria may have also been a member of Margaret of York's court, one of her damsels. And so it's highly likely that she was given this collar as a gift, is one of the theories anyway. Yeah, so it's cast, made of cast pieces. Armor and Castings made this, ARMOUR, and Castings. And you can purchase it if you like on their website. It's each piece is cast, and then each little colored piece is hand enameled, and then the jewels are set into it, and then each piece is assembled together. It's quite a lot of labor goes into making one of these. I did not make it though. As I said, Armor and Castings did. So we're talking 15th century, second half of the 15th century, Burgundy and France. These were popular. There are portraits of English women wearing them also, probably due to their connections with Burgundy and the Burgundian court. What is the thing on your head called? This is a kerchief, a couvre-chef. A Hoover chef in various kinds of 15th century English, and it's made of linen, and it's a really handy way to not have to worry about how your hair looks. But from a practical perspective, this would keep when if I'm outside, say working in the fields or whatever, which I wouldn't per se, but some might, then it will keep the sun off of my head and help me stay cool when it's hot. In the winter, it will provide an extra layer of insulation against the cold, and it will also help keep my hair clean because most houses in medieval Europe didn't have chimneys, they just had open fireplaces. And so many homes were very, very smoky, which means that that detritus from the smoke, the ash from the smoke, would actually get in your hair and make it dirty if your hair is exposed. So I don't think it's an accident that as chimneys become more widespread across Europe, starting in the south in Italy and moving their way north, that hair stops being covered and starts being styled into stylish coiffures as the central hearths go away and chimneys appear and homes get less smoky. So, can I speak some earlier Middle English? I can read. I know how to pronounce Middle and early modern English. Speaking Middle English, not necessarily so much, as in active vocabulary. I have a very large passive vocabulary, so I can read it and understand it. But I don't actively practice speaking it, even though I am actually a professional linguist and can speak and read and write in several languages. I don't have much opportunity to practice speaking Middle English. So it's a question of transitioning the vocabulary from my passive vocabulary to my active vocabulary. But at least I understand the pronunciation rules. SareQuest, I do teach professionally. I teach a lot of things professionally, actually. I teach cooking and dance and sewing, and crafts, and I teach about medieval culture. And people actually, I'm a professional historical consultant, so people actually pay me to consult on historical garments and making garments and researching them and medieval life. I've had authors and movie makers actually consult me about the details for their books and or movies. Having a fireplace without a chimney is crazy, and yet for most of human history, most people had fireplaces with no chimneys. Literally, there's a fireplace in the center of the floor and there's a hole in your roof. There it is. Wesley, actually, it was not common for teenage girls to have babies as such. It was very unusual for kids to have kids. First off, remember, children were expected to mature much more early. They were given serious responsibility starting at the age of 7. It's when apprenticeships started, or page work started, or being sent to another household and trained as a lady, a damsel, to become a mistress of a great estate, right? That started at the age of 7. Childhood was real short in the Middle Ages. And as for having children, in most places, it was expected that you would wait until the age of, a young woman would wait until the age of 15 to actually consummate a marriage, and therefore wouldn't give birth usually until 16. And depending on where you are in the medieval world, that age could be later. It was not normal for children to have children, but also a 15-year-old woman in the 15th century would be much more mature and much more prepared than a 15-year-old would in our world in terms of real life things. Yeah, see you on Discord, Twitchy. I'm going to, once the jet lag wears off, Twitchy, I'm going to try to do some later live streams, but jet lag's been kicking my ass, man. It's the thought of ventilation that counts. Yeah. Knights married their apprentices. Oh, they definitely didn't. uh, yeah. Um, Men actually generally married much later, with the exception of the heirs of a principality or a kingdom. Then they usually married much earlier, but they didn't consummate the marriage until they were into their later teens, no matter what, no matter when the marriage actually took place. Okay. Well, there I have resold the stocking. I'm just going to trim up those loose threads now. And so hopefully I'm wearing a stocking now, otherwise I would try it on. I'm going to try it on and see if I need to change anything or loosen anything. But now I no longer have holes in the bottom of my stocking, and this fustian will certainly last a lot longer than the linen that was here. So you can actually clearly see now the holes that I was repairing because they're backed up by white. And what is less easy to see on the screen, maybe, is how thin and worn out the rest of the linen is actually getting. So yeah, this was an essential way to improve and enhance the longevity of these, because the part that's around my leg is just fine. I'm not dancing on the sides of my, on the sides of my legs. I'm dancing on my feet, so that's where all the wear and tear is. Oh, is there a question about average life expectancy? Yeah, as my condottiero says, um, it actually seems that average life expectancy was not much different from the modern world if you control for high infant mortality, and also if you control for women who die in childbed, right? Once you control for that, then life expectancy gets longer. And then if you also control for battlefield deaths, then life expectancy gets even longer, because those sorts of, it depends on what you're trying to find out. Are you trying to find out how long people would naturally live if humans, human issues didn't interfere with it, like war? um, or you just want to know what the average age actually was. And there's a difference between, this is why you have mean, median, mode, and range. There's a difference between average range and mean age. And those are, in the Middle Ages, definitely two different figures. But people women who manage to survive childbirth live to be very old, 70s and 80s, actually more often than not. The thing that would kill people more often than not prematurely was not that they aged more quickly, it was disease. Right. There were frequent outbreaks of the plague, of the bubonic plague, after the Black Death in the 1340s to early 1350s. There were continuous re-outbreaks every 10 to 20 years that would go through and kill a lot of people. So disease is a big shortener of lifespans in the Middle Ages. It's not necessarily a question of, oh, people are just dying younger. No, they're being killed off by these great plagues because it's a pre-antibiotic era. And yeah, once you count in infant mortality, which is through the roof, by the way, children, I've been just thinking back on it, of all the cases I know offhand, it really feels like you have a 50% chance of surviving as a child. Or put the other way, you have a 50% chance of dying before you reach adulthood if you're a child in the Middle Ages. And it's pretty rough. Let's see. Yeah, so actually, foot wrapping cloths historically have been used over top of stockings like this, right? So you would put this on and then you would add wrapping cloth around it for extra warmth. And in Russia, that makes a special sense in the winter because it's damned cold. Did you use a 15th century haberdashery sewing kit? 15th century sewing kit would be relatively basic to what we might have now. I mean, so I have certain 15th century, I certainly have 15th century pieces to my sewing kit, right? So here is a replica 15th century needle or pin case, right? It's actually worn on the belt, hypothetically, but I've never worn it on my belt because it would annoy me to wear this on my belt. But you can see you suspend it from your belt and then you just run the lid up like that. You don't even have to take it off of your belt to actually access it. So I've got that. I do have some replica medieval needles here somewhere. I can show you what those look like. This is a replica iron needle. It's not necessarily showing up particularly well, but that's a replica iron needle. And this is a replica bronze needle. Actually, I should be using these. I just got these, so I keep forgetting that I have them, so I keep forgetting to use them. Right, they are considerably thicker than a modern needle, though. So at least these ones are. We know they had super fine needles in the Middle Ages, but those never survived the archaeological record because they're so thin that they just deteriorate entirely. So yeah, I've got that, and I'm working on actually having a replica pair of medieval shears made. Working with a blacksmith on that, we'll see how that experiment comes out, if he can actually make them to be really good shears. I do have replica medieval spools. Actually, I just bought these from Feed the Ravens. They are not a channel sponsor, but if you'd like, these are replica like 14th, 15th century spools, and I think we might have some from the 13th century as well. Go to Feed the Ravens, search Feed the Ravens, and they make these themselves, right? They're great, fantastic replica spools. I just bought a bunch, which is why these don't have thread on them yet, but here are ones on which I've already wound the thread myself by hand, like an idiot. So yeah, those are with the thread wound around them. So I definitely have, oh, and I've got my, to actually keep my sewing supplies, I actually have a bentwood box, which is a very authentic container for medieval sewing supplies. This one actually, though, came from IKEA, but I don't think IKEA sells them anymore, unfortunately. Yeah, so I have been working on assembling a fully authentic kit, but I'm still working on getting a pair of actually medieval shears, which I don't currently have. I just have standard tailored shears, which could cut a finger off. Let me see. Yeah, mean is an average. Sorry, median. You're right. Mean is the average. Sorry, I meant median. Apologize. You are correct. Median is the average. Mean is the average. Median is a different thing. So there's a difference between the mean age and the median age. Let me see. Traditional Chinese medicine. I live in a place where traditional Chinese medicine is still practiced. We call it Oriental medicine here. In fact, I live in a city that is the capital of Oriental medicine in Korea, historically and modernly. And I'm not certain I would say it is entirely more effective than Western medicine. A lot of people here do both on purpose. So I will say that I think Western and Oriental medicine complement each other. Why the different metals for the sewing needles? Well, actually, it's a question of cost. Iron was much more expensive in the Middle Ages than bronze was. So I wanted to get one of each to see, how they lasted and how they sewed. But iron is definitely the more expensive metal than bronze is. So that, or brass. I think this is brass, actually, not bronze. Either way, copper alloy. Yeah, so iron needles and iron pins were the more expensive, stronger option. Iron is stronger than copper alloys are. Copper alloys make weaker pins and weaker needles. So also from that perspective, iron would have been more expensive from being a more, a better material. Putting my hand behind the needle can help the camera focus. Let me see how I do this. There we go. You're right. Thank you. There we go. This is an iron needle. Yep, that's an iron needle. And then this is the brass needle. And the thing that's very different about them is that the heads are hammered flat and punched out instead of it being round all the way. So there's kind of a wedge flat area that comes up along the backside. Okay, well, everyone, I have just received my 5% warning on my camera. So it's going to die more quickly than not. We didn't get around to the book corner. I'm so sorry. I will do book corner tomorrow and tomorrow's sewing party. And then, so I've got a medieval sewing party tomorrow at roughly the same time. And then on Monday morning, Asia time, or Sunday night, America's, middle of the night, Europe. We have medieval story time. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon and my channel members for financially supporting me. All of you who leave super chats, I really appreciate you. I appreciate all of you in my community who contribute by participating in the live chat, by leaving comments, by watching my content, and just generally being the great supportive people that you are. Thank you for being part of the growing Creative Contessa community. I wish you all a lovely evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world. Hopefully until tomorrow, everyone, stay creative.